Zero, Starting Life in Another World by Tapi Nagatsuki, casted six-tale novel. Please subscribe to our channel. It was dark, an entire world of nothing but darkness. He was tossed into a hazy world, seemingly floating in water with no sense of left or right, up or down. His body was unable to move at all. He couldn't feel his hands or legs, and he doubted his eyes and ears were functioning. With his mind so dazed, any thoughts he tried to formulate simply slipped out of his brain.
Where is this? Who am I? What happened to make it like this?
What little consciousness he held on to resulted only in ramblings that made the darkness flicker ever so slightly.
I love you.
In that pitch blackness, a voice penetrated deep into his heart. It hung in his unhearing ears. It reached what should have been his still, unbeating heart. It found his soul, which was still unsure of its own existence. He wailed, as the voice touched him directly, its wild, mad emotion pressing in on his heart. The voice was so terribly fleeting. The whispers wrenched his heart, filling it with such longing that it threatened to shatter. Hearing words lovely enough to scorch his soul made him feel like he would go mad.
If I had fingers, I would touch you. If I had a mouth, I would call your name. If I had arms, I would embrace you. If I had feet, I would run to your side. If I had a body, you would never be alone again. But none of these wishes could be granted. He had no fingers, mouth, arms, feet, or body to give. The feeling was the same. In fact, it was a passion, even greater than what he'd felt before. The warmth he received magnified his yearning, his emotions many times over until finally they became sins. Sloth, because I cannot wipe away your tears. Lust, because I want us to melt together and become one. Gluttony, because I want to consume you, to take all of you for myself. Greed, because I want to have everything that I love. Wrath, because I cannot forgive the absurdity of it all. Pride, because I scorn everything that is not you. Jealousy, because that is all I feel for the world that embraces you.
With this realization, the world shrouded in black was filled with an overwhelming sensation of love. That instant, the supposedly empty space warped, then shattered as irreversible time began to flow backward. It was simple. He understood that he was starting over. Where he had ended in darkness, light was born, and if he walked toward it, the world would greet him once more.
I love you.
He turned his back on the voice and walked forward. He wanted to turn toward it, but he held fast. However, surely, one day he would take her hand.
I love you.
The lovely voice called out until the very end, when Subaru Natsuki began anew.
Hey, kid?
Huh?
Subaru's mind was roused by the abrupt calling of his name, along with the sensation of his shoulder being shaken. The image of the world around him changed in an instant, almost like someone had switched camera angles in his brain. The sudden influx of information startled him, making Subaru feel dizzy as he blinked several times. The next moment, the unfathomable shock known as comprehension coursed through his entire being.
No way! Subaru put a hand to his forehead as he listened to the sound of his heartbeats pumping blood through his body. Subaru had experienced a blank of several seconds, interrupting his thoughts a number of times before. It was the result of death, the time between the erasure and resurrection of Subaru Natsuki. He died. He died. Death had greeted Subaru once more. Moreover, Subaru had lost his life in battle against that wily bastard Sloth. Ai. After overcoming many hardships, much suffering, in the end he'd still lost his life. He defeated the White Whale and, after that, reorganized the expedition force, bringing it with him as he traveled to Earlham Village to fight the witch cult. At the end of that anguish, all that joy, sadness, and anger had all come to naught.
Nam.
Uji-ya.
Subaru had been covering his face with his hands, cutting himself off from the world, when he was suddenly assaulted by unexpected sensations. The feel of hot breath in his earlobe being pinned between two hard points sent the astonished Subaru tumbling to the ground. Wide-eyed from the exceptionally soft sensation, he noticed yellow eyes gazing down at him with a teasing look. The owner of those eyes touched a finger to their lips coquettishly as a wry, beautiful smile appeared.
The teasing was because you were staring into space. But what a wonderful reaction. Meow. Fairy enjoyed it so much that this might become a habit.
The sight of his flaxen kitty ears flicking as he continued speaking lightheartedly left Subaru listening with his mouth agape. Eventually, he swallowed and called out her, or rather his, name.
Is that you, Ferris?
Who else does it look like? Maybe you're not just daydreaming, but hallucinating too. You could have swallowed some white whale mist. Should I give you a proper examination?
Nah, I'm all right. I just felt like asking. Right, what I was asking about.
As Ferris peered at him in concern, Subaru shook his head before taking a deep breath and examining the area. Ferris was seated directly beside him, and around Ferris, many others. No, properly speaking, they were in a circle with Subaru at the center. Beneath his feet lay the grassland. It was clear from the dawn sky above that the sun had not risen yet. With everyone's gaze focused on him, Subaru sensed a ferocious bestial presence hovering to his left.
Were you the one who spoke to me first?
What are you talking about, bro? You had a crazy look in your eyes. Pull it together.
The dog face of Ricardo, the large-framed beast man, grimaced with a suspicious look. Subaru, realizing from the exchange that Ricardo had seen his face the instant he returned by death, scratched his cheek as he looked over everyone's face once more, nodding as he spoke again.
That was seriously bad for my heart. I mean, really, I thought I was back in front of the fruit store again.
Exhaling like a deflating balloon, Subaru let the tension out of his shoulders as his palm brushed the ground. The cold dirt, fresh grass, and raw earth under him meant he definitely wasn't in the capital. This was the Liffus Highway, where they'd held a general briefing right after defeating the white whale. In other words,
The save point got updated, huh?
it felt like he had narrowly avoided a terrible fate, but it wasn't something he could laugh at. Still, the silver lining brought him relief. When it came to worst cases, some were worse than others. Having fought the good fight only to gain an empty defeat and returning by death was undoubtedly a worst case. But there could have been something even more terrible, namely having no change in restart point and returning to a moment before he managed to defeat the white whale. Compared to that, this worst case was not the most horrific possibility. At the very least, they had beaten the white whale, fulfilling the Sword Devil's 14-year ambition.
Sir Subaru, are you all right? Your face appears rather pale.
Wilhelm, the Sword Devil, stared at Subaru and expressed his concern.
It's nothing.
Said Subaru, shaking his head immediately, tightening his disjointed thoughts and slackened cheeks, even though he was still reeling mentally after only just enduring a return by death. He couldn't simply use that as an excuse. After all, Subaru and the others were in the very middle of a critical discussion, the briefing to decide what countermeasures to take against the witch cult.
If you are no longer distressed, let us review the situation.
Raising a finger, the elegant knight Julius restarted the meeting. Scholarly wariness and righteous indignation resided in his almond eyes as he requested they carry on.
From this point onward, we shall proceed to the Mather's domain to oppose the nefarious witch cultists lying in wait. Ideally, this will result in their annihilation and the slaying of the Archbishop of the 7 deadly sins commanding them. However, what we must prioritize is the safety of the innocent people caught up in this incident, and in preparation for that,
For the getaway, we have called on the traveling merchants Anastasia and Russell to help us. The messenger we sent to communicate the alliance and the rescue operation should have arrived at the mansion already. Sorry, I'm all good now.
Subaru thanked Julius for giving him time to calm down and fully rejoin the conversation. Thanks to Julius summarizing the topics at the assembly, Subaru could grasp exactly how far things had proceeded before his return by death. Apparently, Subaru had already explained witch cult hunting made simple, as well as the insurance he'd procured. However, he had already learned from the last go-around that his attempts to secure insurance would transform into deadly poison. The letter of goodwill they had sent had turned out to be blank, which had sown distrust. Meanwhile, inviting the traveling merchants to participate had left them open to infiltration by witch cultists. He needed to implement new countermeasures as quickly as possible, but
your face suggests that something is amiss?
What are you, a doctor? Stop looking at people's faces and figuring out everything they're thinking. Geez.
Want the actual doctor sitting right beside you to examine you from head to toe instead? I wouldn't mind.
As Subaru sank into thought, Julius and Ferris sandwiched him from both sides as they pointed out his troubled expression. Inwardly, Subaru ground his teeth at their persistence. He certainly did have an issue on his mind. However, he couldn't come up with a good way to explain it. He had to warn them about the Archbishop of the Seven Deadly Sins' dangerous authority, and a number of new problems on top of that. But how could he explain these things in a way his comrades would believe?
No, this is wrong. It's not good enough. Right, I forgot some things again.
Hmm.
When Subaru firmly shut his eyes, the words he found within himself caused Ferris to cock his head in confusion. Julius remained silent with his brows knit as Subaru rued the extent of his own stupidity. How many times would Subaru Natsuki make the same mistake before he moved forward? He opened his closed eyes and looked around at the faces of the 50-odd members of the expeditionary force. Subaru's silence had brought tension to their gazes, but they harbored no doubt. What they felt was not fear, but anticipation. There was no sense of despair, only hope. After everything that had been spoken, after all the help that had been given, in the end, Subaru had even gotten this far only thanks to the support Rem had offered him.
I believe you have immersed yourself in sentimentality enough.
Julius sensed the change in Subaru's demeanor, and his light-hearted prompt invited a change in subject. The man really got on his nerves, but for a short moment, Subaru felt nothing but gratitude toward him. He felt equally grateful for the comrades who granted him their own thanks and trust.
Sorry for being all indecisive earlier. Actually, I have to add to my explanation about the witch cult, no, that's not exactly it. I realized some things for the first time. I want to speak to all of you about those issues.
He didn't have to worry about how to come up with a good explanation. That was a waste of time. All he had to do was not hold anything back, tell as much of the truth as he could, and they would respond with their faith in him. Even if Subaru could not reveal the nature of return by death, he could uncover the things he learned as a result of it. This was the one way he could share what he knew of the future with his comrades, and they would accept his preposterous tales in complete seriousness. All because understanding and trust were the greatest weapons in Subaru Natsuki's arsenal. Subaru had gleaned a number of new facts from his most recent confrontation with Betelgeuse. One was that a witch cultist infiltrating the traveling merchants hired for the evacuation had delivered a blank letter of goodwill to Rosewall Manor. Another was that Betelgeuse Romanet, Conti's authority included the worst power imaginable. In particular, one aspect of Betelgeuse Romanet, Conti's power, possession, posed the greatest obstacle to the expeditionary force's efforts to take down Sloth.
Anyone know about a power to overwrite someone else's mind with your own, letting you mentally take them over? Some sort of magic that can do something like that?
Much of the magic in this new world Subaru found himself in had effects beyond anything he could conceive. The basics of magic began with the 4 elements. Then there were a great many other things, like Beatrice's passage, Rosewall's flight magic, the mutant aberrations of magic called curses, and the special abilities known as blessings, too. In a world where such incredible abilities existed, possession had to be possible, too. It was with such hopes that Subaru put the question to his lips, but
Overwriting another person's mind with your own. That's nothing but a stupid, unbelievable idea. Meow.
Give me my greatest weapon back.
What are Mew talking about?
though Subaru had brought up the subject with courage, the way it was laughed off so quickly was a major blow to that foundation of trust. When Subaru pouted and gave Ferris a resentful stare, Ferris was merely baffled. Cutting in, Julius adopted a thoughtful pose and spoke.
Given the topic at hand, you believe it's possible the Archbishop of the Seven Deadly Sins employs a strange power along those lines. Am I correct?
Yeah, you've got it. I decided to call it possession, but that's not far off from what actually happens. He survives by moving from body to body. That explains how he shows up in so many places at once, right?
From the long silence, Julius seemed to be mulling over Subaru's explanation. But whether others doubted it or not, it was a fact. Having shared his own body with that very madman, Subaru could firmly confirm that much. His mind conquered people's flesh, stealing control for itself. Without any doubt, Patelgius Romane Conti was a spiritual entity that grafted itself to the bodies of others, a repulsive, wicked ability.
In the past, I have seen references in old tomes about research on similar phenomena. It was reckless research, but
When Julius, a hand still over his own mouth, offered up that morsel, Subaru bit. The handsome man plumbed the depths of his memories as he deftly summarized what he could recall from the tome.
it was research on lost magic, or perhaps a related record. The world lost many things in the immediate aftermath of the great catastrophe 4 centuries ago. This variety of magic seems to have been among what was lost, gone without a trace, save in records. There was a description of an ability similar to what you describe.
Well, don't hold back. What was the similar lost magic?
A technique for soul transference.
As Subaru drew closer, Julius revealed something that sounded far removed from magic. However, Subaru did not miss the look of disgust that came over Julius's face as he spoke of it. After firmly declaring the research abominable, Julius closed his eyes and continued.
The phenomenon itself is exceedingly simple. Everything comprising the caster's soul, his memories, experiences, and most likely elemental character and destiny are seared onto the soul of another person.
Meaning, it is possible to overwrite the memories and mind of another person, then.
It was like doing a copy and paste with a computer file. It treated human memory like a file, overwriting it with another person's file-like soul, blotting out the old and saving the new. That way the discarded soul would be lost, and the overwriting soul would remain.
But it does not exist in reality. The magic is lost, the ritual is theoretical, and the difficulty is of an almost unheard of level. Reproducing the feat would require magical genius and tenacity beyond the ability of mortals. I simply cannot believe this Archbishop of the 7 deadly sins possesses such intellect and skill.
Hey man, not believing it exists isn't a real reason to reject the idea, especially since this is the witch cult we're talking about.
Sabawu, you're getting too worked up. Julius has things to say too.
The influential Julius rejected his hypothesis, which made Subaru snap at the knight until Ferris chided him for it. Subaru proceeded to put on a guilty look and said, "Go on," prodding Julius to continue.
Sorry. It is a bad habit of mine to take my time reaching a conclusion. Even if we put aside the fact that the ritual has been lost, there are a great deal of obstacles for the technique we've been discussing. First, the souls that the caster can affect are fairly limited. The technique is not the kind that allows the caster to transfer his soul to any random person he touches.
Well, of course not. Meow. Memories are a bit out of my field, but overwriting individual gates is no trivial thing. It's probably limited to blood relations. Meow?
A limitation to blood relatives would be extremely desirable. As Ferris said, the soul being transferred would bounce off the gate if it is not highly similar. Besides, even when one soul is laid over another, the original soul's influence over the body will remain. There would be a constant concern about the body being compelled by the mind.
It sure does sound like magic that has a lot of downsides.
Hearing the pair's opinions, Subaru could understand why the objections were numerous. Subaru could not dismiss out of hand the possibility that Patelgius was an exceptional magic user capable of employing lost magic, but it was pretty much impossible that his choice of bodies was limited to blood relations. The fact that he had successfully possessed Subaru shelved that premise completely.
However, it is too soon to dismiss a completely different method.
Will you make up your mind?
I am offended by your outburst. I stated that I know of similar magic as a prerequisite for further discussion. Besides, even if it is not the exact same technique, there are surely important clues we should consider.
Such as?
Naturally, I mean the possibility that the conditions for possession are just as strict as those for soul transference.
Julius's assertion made Subaru's face scrunch up, but he immediately grasped the point. If soul transference was invariably limited to blood relatives, then possession might have similar restrictions.
We could deduce that the technique is limited to fellow witch cultists, and a select few at that.
You mean those finger people?
It is a title in poor taste when referring to spare bodies. I suppose that suits an archbishop of the 7 deadly sins well.
Julius agreed with Ferris's conclusion, a fact that made Subaru gaze in astonishment. In such an incredibly short time, the two had worked out a plausible theory about how possession operated. Even if the pair were the brains of the operation as well as the most versed in magic out of all the members of the expeditionary force, the results were beyond Subaru's expectations. And simultaneously, a plan to truly hunt down the Archbishop of the Seven Deadly Sins of Sloth took form. Namely,
If we take away all the Archbishop's extra lives, in other words, destroy all his fingers,
He would lose the chance to possess anyone. That's when the Archbishop will face his end.
the way Julius firmly finished the thought made Subaru feel both deep admiration and a sense of defeat from the bottom of his heart. The difficult situation had made him start to lose all hope, but thanks to them, he could finally see the light in the darkness. After all, it was a solution that was neither contradictory nor disputable.
In conclusion, we will prioritize eliminating the fingers lurking in the forest, then settle matters with Sloth.
Julius's declaration drew the meeting to a close. The faces of the expeditionary force members seated around them surged with determination and resolve. Great strength can be found when a person's ability and mission are one and the same. When the members of the expeditionary force rose, their morale was as high as when they had done battle with the white whale.
everyone, there's just one more thing I have to tell you.
It was then that Subaru called out, drawing the attention of the impetuous warriors who were ready to venture forth. When those intense gazes turned his way, Subaru endured his genuinely apologetic feelings to discuss something he was obligated to explain, namely,
Sorry, but it's not just the fingers. I'm probably a target for the Archbishop's possession ability, too. What do you think we can do about that?
it had been the direct cause of his latest return by death, and the final hurdle he'd had to overcome. Once he shared that pitiful fact, they began to devise a countermeasure. In the end, their departure time arrived before the Witch Cult Countermeasures Conference reached a definite conclusion. Subaru wanted to continue hammering out a plan, but if they didn't make it to the battlefield in time, that would be putting the cart before the horse. So to avert that, Subaru gave Julius a suggestion.
Hey, Julius! With the magic of your spirit groupies, you should be able to link together the minds of people within its effective range, right? Can't we use that to discuss this on the move?
Subaru was basing this query on his experience with Nect, the mind-sharing spell he had experienced from the last loop, as if it were his own wonderful idea. At the time, Julius had used the spell to link all of the expeditionary force's minds to quickly deal with Ram's surprise attack. It had to be possible to use that to hold a meeting, too. Subaru's proposal made Julius look at Ferris with mild surprise.
He didn't hear it from Fairy, okay?
Said the kitty-eared knight in response to his gaze, waving a hand as he headed for his land dragon.
What did Ferris mean that it wasn't from him?
It's nothing. I did not think that you knew I was a spirit user. I was merely wondering where you might have learned that.
Right. This is where the Spirit Knight thing first came up.
That Julius had identified himself as a spirit knight was information Subaru heard close to the end of the last go, around. At the point where he was currently, Subaru shouldn't have recognized Julius as anything more than a first-rate knight, but it was a rare opportunity to take Julius off guard. Subaru put on a smug face.
You're just more famous than you think. Well, the price of fame didn't have anything to do with me noticing you quietly stuck one of your quasi-spirits on me.
So you were aware of even that?
This time, a look of unconcealable distress was plain in Julius's gaze. The reaction made Subaru smile, but right after, he turned his head aside. That was because, for an instant, Julius's eyes, which stared at Subaru, seemed to endure a wave of deep pain.
Certainly, as you have pointed out, I placed one of my flower buds on you. Aya, come on out.
But he immediately concealed the wave of emotion behind his usual composure. Beckoned by Julius' hand, a red light leaped from Subaru's hair. It was more flicker than flame, more warmth than light. One of the 6 quasi-spirits accompanying Julius.
This is Aya, quasi-spirit of fire. I had her follow and watch over you.
That's fine, but tell me about stuff like this. I'd panic if some emergency happened and she jumped out all of a sudden.
There is no need for concern. The buds are quite capable. It would never come to something like that.
Thanks for sharing your sappy love story. Now, setting that aside,
When Subaru complained about planting insurance on him without permission, Julius was slightly apologetic. Subaru took it in stride until he realized something didn't fit. Julius' sticking eye on him matched the events of the last go-around. His memory of the spirit saving him from the dragon carriage explosion was still fresh. But besides that, he remembered something odd where Aya was concerned. And as he realized that,
Julius, under what conditions could Aya be shoved out of me against her will?
I am not quite sure I follow your question.
This is important. The answer has a direct impact on the plan to take on the Archbishop.
faced with Subaru's firm statement, Julius discarded his momentary bewilderment and answered.
Attaching Ia to you means, from a spirit user's point of view, a provisional pact. Forcibly breaking the pact would mean that you, the provisional contractor, have rejected her, or perhaps
Perhaps
a superior, formal pact displaced the provisional pact.
In that instant, he gave the answer Subaru truly wanted to hear. Perhaps Julius realized it while speaking the words, because his amber eyes held a glint of comprehension.
It couldn't be. It couldn't be.
The knight said immediately after, shaking his head as if to deny it. However,
a famous detective once said, once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth.
It has the ring of truth. But if it is so, what is to be done?
This is the final piece. I want to hear the rest along the way, like which people fulfill the conditions and which don't.
Understood. Let us do exactly that.
Julius nodded, keeping his words concise as he stuck Aya on Subaru once more and headed to his own land dragon. Subaru felt the warmth of the quasi-spirit on top of his head as he mounted his favorite pitch-black dragon, Pat/.
We've used up a little more time than before. Gonna have to go all out, Pat Lash.
As the land dragon took in Subaru's words, the side of her refined face made it seem he'd stated the obvious. Then the expeditionary force resumed its march along the Lithus Highway, heading for the Mathers domain.
Next.
Julius used the mind-melding spell once they were underway, affecting the entire expeditionary force. The results of the spell were truly as Subaru had envisioned. But
Ah crap, I completely forgot.
Sorry, I didn't think my tuning with Aya and Ness would be an error. There's also the fact that Aya seems rather fond of you. Perhaps you have a high compatibility with spirits.
Save that stuff for later. We can take our time with that talk once everything's over.
Subaru accepted the telepathic apology, pressing his fingers to his temples as his ears continued to ring. Just like last time, Subaru was reeling from the onrush of everyone's brainwaves the instant Nect was activated. It was Subaru's own fault for forgetting all about that side effect. Julius adjusted the signal to more tolerable levels, allowing Subaru to focus on the flow of the conversation.
So for the plan of attack against the Archbishop of the Seven Deadly Sins, how shall we proceed?
Unlike with speaking out loud, there wasn't a good way to differentiate voices conveyed directly via thought. In spite of this, it was possible to tell the sender of thoughts thanks to their individual character. The thought Subaru had just received was a deep blue but concealed scarlet passion within it. Subaru could instantly tell it was Wilhelm who had spoken. The Sword Devil was riding alongside on his land dragon, the grave look on his face radiating hostility toward an unseen madman.
If Sir Subaru and Sir Julius's conjecture is correct, we must carefully consider our method of attack. Invisible magic hands and the ability to take over another's body are both major obstacles.
Yeah, they sure are.
The Archbishop of the Seven Deadly Sins of Sloth had two powers they needed to overcome. He had unseen hands in possession at his disposal, but the expeditionary force had solid leads on ways to deal with both. The main issue at hand was that the method to tackle one power left them vulnerable against the other.
I'm the only one who can see Patelju's unseen hands. That means if we go at him in a frontal attack, it's no good unless I'm around. But I'm also a target for possession. If I'm there and he takes me over, we'll lose our chance to stop him from getting away anyway.
Sir Subaru, I actually have a proposal about that. Would you care to listen?
As Subaru sank into thought, pondering out loud, Wilhelm interjected with an air of confidence. His words aroused hope throughout the expeditionary force. making Wilhelm give a firm telepathic nod.
Concerning the Archbishop's invisible arms, I thought of a simple way to expose them to the naked eye. First, we would scatter a large amount of dust, or possibly dirt, around the Archbishop of the 7 deadly sins.
I don't think we can rely on that. Meow.
Though Ferris casually inserted himself into his explanation midway, Wilhelm paid no heed and explained to the very end. Subaru had already seen his plan in action once before, a Wilhelm-style dirt screen to hold Betelgeuse's authority in check. Knowing the results from the last go-around, Subaru knew that Wilhelm's proposal could work. The problem was that it was such a superhuman feat, only Wilhelm could pull it off. Indeed, all the Expeditionary Force members found the suggestion too challenging, with even Julius and Ricardo communicating telepathically that the feat was beyond them.
I believe anyone can do it with enough practice, but
Yes, but we don't have 50 years to spend practicing. Aside from proving that Old Man Will is inhuman, what'll we do?
Callously ignoring the dejected Wilhelm, Ferris prioritized moving the conversation forward. Subaru felt bad for Wilhelm, but Ferris had made the right decision. Subaru mulled over Ferris's question.
Guess that decides it. Yeah, let's go with the original plan for dealing with the witch cult and the Archbishop of the 7 deadly sins, plus the issues at the mansion and the village. That's probably best.
All the members of the Expeditionary Force reacted to the conclusion of the telepathic witch cult countermeasures conference. Sympathy, concern, trust, anxiety. There was a crush of various emotions, but the general consensus was to respect Subaru's viewpoint. They would proceed as originally planned.
To confirm, you are truly all right with this plan? You won't have any regrets?
When Subaru was still feeling unsure of himself, Julius was the only one to raise the question. Though it was an inelegant method, this exchange served as a necessary ritual to dispel the Expeditionary Force's hesitance. Plus, that it was Julius, of all people, who brought up the topic meant this was an expression of his knightly beliefs.
Don't be ridiculous. It's my plan and my idea. I'm not going to turn around and say, oh, no, maybe we actually shouldn't. No, though Amelia is probably going to be super mad at me when we do this.
With closed eyes, Subaru pictured a lovely girl with silver hair. It had been only a few short hours since he'd left the world where he'd gazed upon her with unrequited love, his wish for a one-sided reunion having been granted. Even so, the serene sight of her face and the sound of her lovely voice were undiminished. It was because he could still vividly recall those things that he was able to hold firm in his decision.
I'm happy everyone's worried, but don't give me the chance to say I want to stop. If you thought that I had managed to squeeze out any courage from myself, you should know that it's actually all on loan.
The success or failure of the operation would be decided by Subaru's will, but he knew that they would never keep questioning his resolve for such a callous reason. That was why he could bear it.
Besides, I'm optimistic that everything that raid the last part. The road that leads there is a little treacherous, but that's all. When you think of it that way, it'll be an easy win, right?
Subaru, choosing the words, easy win means you're actually a big shot and I just never realized, right?
Don't be stupid. I know I'm small fry. I might be optimistic, but I need all of your strength so I can share a passionate embrace with Amelia at the very end. All right? Come on, guys. Just think of yourselves as my cupids and give me a hand, okay?
I am still not quite sure on what basis you made that claim, but you have made your resolve clear.
Julius spoke for everyone when he approved of how Subaru's lightheartedness had swept away the heavy, stifling atmosphere. As that brought the meeting to an end, Subaru shifted his eyes to the road ahead, toward the edge of the plains. Past that boundary, the grassland came to an end, and Subaru would soon be able to make out the treetops of the forested region beyond. Once they left the plains and took a few woodland roads, they would arrive at the Mathers domain. His heart beat loudly, throbbing as if it might crack. Yet even so, Subaru continued to look.
Ho ho? What, you're worried about me? That's adorable.
Freed of the briefing now that everyone was no longer telepathically speaking, Subaru found Patlash's head turned toward him with a pensive look. Subaru showed her a strange smile as he stroked her neck. Then he rummaged in the sack affixed to the land dragon's saddle, locating something by touch alone. What he found was a tool that would play a critical part during the operation. After all that time, an ache still ran through Subaru's chest when he recalled how it had passed into his hands. In Subaru's mind, it was because of that pain that he could move forward, thrusting his fear and anxiety aside.
This time, I'll make things right.
Of course, that's what everyone intends to do. It'll be all right. The plan was devised so scrupulously, there is no reason to think of failure. Our preparations have been meticulous. Also, once this is all over, I would like to have a toast with you.
Stop saying so many things that sound like famous last words.
Subaru shouted at Julius, who was riding alongside him, presumably ignorant of the concept of death flags. Those yells echoed loudly, ringing in the air as though they could even be heard in the Mathers domain, which was still far, far away. When the light of day reached her sleep-deprived eyelids, Amelia rose with a light headache.
It's morning already.
Amelia sat up in bed, blinking several times. She brushed her silver hair away from her forehead, briefly lingering on the boundary between sleep and consciousness before letting out a frail murmur that mirrored her thoughts as it floated to the surface. She hadn't slept much for the past several days. Last night, she had gone to sleep several hours after sunset again. After entering the forest at night, using her power to reweave the wards that kept demon beasts out, Amelia had probably managed to get only a couple hours of sleep. Her head felt heavy, and her thoughts sluggish as if someone had plunged them into mud. Amelia had never been much of an early riser to begin with, even before the numerous issues that had occupied all her time for the past several days. While fatigue and anguish were constantly whittling her mind away, there was no helping it. It had been a week since the candidates for the royal selection had assembled at the palace, and a week since she had demonstrated her determination. After that, Amelia had returned to the manor and spent 5 days acting as the representative of her faction. The pressure she'd felt during those scant 5 days had been more than enough to overwhelm her.
I thought I understood. I really thought I did.
Amelia strongly gripped her bedsheet as she lamented her incompetence. In the blink of an eye, she recalled the events of the last week in the back of her mind. She had been called to the capital, faced the other candidates, declared her conviction with all the eyes of the court upon her, and then…
Subaru.
As Amelia spoke the name of the boy she'd left behind at the capital, she lowered her eyes. Enduring the pain, she thought of that cheerful, sensitive boy who was always desperate to help others, and just a tiny bit delusional, wondering what he was doing at the moment. The intense argument between them at the palace, as well as his pained expression, like an abandoned child's, were seared into her retinas. Those images had been burned into her conscience over and over. In the end, his tortured face, the things that he'd spoken, the words that he hadn't wanted to hear but heard anyway. Amelia felt that no one could be blamed for those things, except for herself.
But it's for the best, isn't it?
The clash of their inner thoughts had resulted in the two of them going separate ways. However, Amelia did not think that explosion of emotion was something that should have been avoided. In fact, it was better for them to follow different paths. The place where Subaru belonged was not by her side. After all, Amelia was a half-elf, the object of everyone's hatred. Anyone who stood by her would bear the same hatred from simply being associated with her. That kind-hearted boy would be no exception. Indeed, it was because Subaru wanted to be by her side that he had been so terribly hurt, in both body and spirit, during his duel with Julius. She didn't want to subject him to that, to make him go through such a thing again. Over the course of their quarrel, she thought Subaru had to have seen his mistake. Amelia's one regret was that at the very, very end, she had let her true feelings slip. Namely, the hope that Subaru, of all people, could set her existence as a half-elf aside and treat her as a normal girl. It had been a fickle, fleeting, futile, selfish hope.
Subaru can't see me as anything but special. That's what he said.
She despaired at her own selfishness, pushing him away, hurting him, only to look to him for salvation. Such shallowness was unforgivable. Half-elf or no.
Leah, you're furling your eyebrows. You're ruining your adorable face.
A voice suddenly spoke to Amelia as she held her knees while still in bed. When she glanced up, there was a little cat spirit with gray fur. Amelia smiled slightly as she offered a greeting.
Good morning, Puck. You're up early today.
Good morning, Leah. This morning there was something to take care of.
Did something happen?
If I said I was making an effort to sleep early and get up early, that would be a lie. It's because I'm really worried about you, Leah. It's been one thing after another, especially yesterday.
Amelia lowered her eyes at Puck's uncharacteristically awkward reply. The events of the previous day had contributed a great deal to Amelia's current mental fatigue and lack of sleep. The bitter memory of the nearby villagers rejecting whatever she had to say or offer bubbled up in her mind. Their fear and disapproval had not been enough for them to hurl cruel words at her, but their gazes alone had already cut deep into Amelia's heart.
I knew that would happen.
You also know what falling is, but you still hurt and bleed when it happens. If you ask me, simply knowing the result isn't the same as actually experiencing it for yourself.
When Amelia used a childish excuse to push past, Puck mercilessly cut off her escape route. But this wasn't something Puck did maliciously. Puck, in his own way, was urging Amelia to stop running from the truth, as well as hiding her feelings.
Puck. Puck, what do you think I should do? How should I? No, not just me. How can everyone get along better? How do I get everyone to?
Leah, maybe you should just do what you like? I'm on your side no matter what happens, Leah, and anyone who gets in your way is my enemy.
Though it was a promise from her surest ally, in that moment the words offered Amelia no comfort. It was the answer she'd expected. Puck would support Amelia unconditionally, but that didn't help with her problem. In the end, Amelia would have to rely on her own judgment. Puck's entire value system was centered on Amelia. Everything and everyone else came second.
You're not going to turn your back on that village no matter what, are you? The pink-haired girl headed to the village again this morning. Maybe waiting for her report is all you can do?
Ram went to the village, but she hasn't had any rest for a while either.
I'm telling you, that girl's doing a lot better than you are, Leah. She finds places to take breaks from her work. At the very least, she can handle herself.
She shrank a little. Puck's rational assessment of Ram, of course, implied that Amelia was wholly incapable of taking care of herself. As it happened, Amelia found herself relying on Ram that very moment. For the past several days, Ram had been executing a portion of Roswell's affairs, shouldering his responsibilities dealing with the mansion or Earlham village, all while Amelia remained in the mansion. Excusing himself to conduct negotiations with a local big shot, Roswell had claimed he would be away for no more than a few days. The great responsibility brought worry and stress, but if she couldn't cope with that much in the span of a few days, how could she possibly hope to participate in the royal selection and be ready for what would come after? With such thoughts in mind, she'd accepted the duty, shelving her feelings of guilt from leaving Subaru in the royal capital, then readied herself to face the days to come with atypical seriousness. But 2 days prior, the situation had greatly changed.
A strange presence in the forest? Yes. Unpleasant fellows against whom even my clairvoyance is ineffective?
Ram delivered the news in her usual calm tone of voice, but her furrowed eyebrows were an ominous sign. Her clairvoyance was the unusual ability to synchronize with the vision of others and see through their eyes. However, even this ability, particularly useful for reconnaissance and searching, had been unable to discern the identity of the presence she'd sensed in the forest.
It's not related to demon beasts?
The barrier has been redeployed. I believe it is unrelated, but what do you wish to do?
Well, that goes without saying. We can't pretend nothing's happening. If we can't do anything about it, at least we can keep the villagers from falling into danger.
Prioritizing their safety. You wish to evacuate the villagers, then?
That would be best. This mansion is big enough to accommodate all of them, right?
That was the conclusion Amelia and Ram had reached during their discussion about the forbidding presence in the forest. That Ram hadn't objected was somewhat reassuring to Amelia. As Roswell's proxy, Ram would have mercilessly shot down any proposal she deemed foolish. Accordingly, Amelia had walked to Earlham Village, practically next door, with some expectations she'd convince the villagers to evacuate to the mansion, sparing them from peril. But
We've heard about the royal selection, as well as the fact that you are a half-elf. We refuse to follow you. Everyone has agreed on this.
an old woman acting as the village's representative spoke these words, rejecting Amelia's offer. The obstinate reply, filled with rejection and renunciation, hurt Amelia. The fact that it hurt surprised her. Rejection was Amelia's natural environment. She had tasted that discouragement countless times before, and yet she realized at the same time that pain was still felt sharply in her heart. Amelia had hoped it would change her. She'd hoped that leaping into the royal selection, a great undertaking, would be the first step to changing her lot in life, and that perhaps the reactions around her that she'd taken for granted might change. 2. The points of contact between her and the villagers over the 2 preceding months had further raised these hopes, but Amelia had continued to deceive them about her true identity, using concealment magic. Could anyone truly trust her or allow her into their heart when she had never shown her real face even once? When she'd spent those days with the villagers in what she mistook for harmony, those smiles had not aimed toward her. They had been meant for the young man leading Amelia to the village by the hand. Amelia had not earned anything herself. And yet, had she misunderstood even so?
In the end, what was I even doing?
Once her offer was rejected, her subsequent pleas fell on deaf ears. She offered 3 more times, but every time she was refused. The calamity that had come from the royal capital on the heels of that despair had only added to Amelia's suffering.
I have come bearing a letter of goodwill from my master, Duchess Cruche Karsten.
An envoy of humble demeanor had arrived at the mansion to present an envelope sealed with the lion's crest of the House of Karsten. When she accepted the letter, Amelia could only guess as to its contents. Cruche was not only a royal candidate, but the person she had entrusted with Subaru's care in the capital. Wondering what might have befallen him, she had opened the letter in great haste.
But it was blank. The pink-haired girl said the message was a declaration of war. I can't blame her for being upset.
The letter itself was resting atop the room's desk. When Amelia's gaze drifted to it, Puck had discerned what she was thinking, cocking his head slightly as he recounted their discovery that the sheet was blank. Just as Puck said, the letter had been delivered blank. There was nothing written on it, neither front nor back. Sending the blank letter implied that the sender deemed the recipient someone not worth speaking to. However, the letter's contents and the very act of sending such a thing clashed greatly with what Amelia knew about Cruche as an individual. Because of that, she had immediately suspected there must have been some mistake. She had asked the envoy what Cruche had truly intended, but he promptly asserted that he'd simply done as he had been commanded. Ultimately, Amelia was unable to find a satisfying answer.
Let's keep the envoy under watch here at the mansion. If it comes to that, we can use him as a bargaining chip.
In spite of Ram's extreme position, the envoy was being hosted at the mansion, safe and sound. Even so, the forbidding presence in the forest and the blank letter had only worsened Amelia's mental load. In the end, she hadn't been able to sleep well last night either. So Amelia did the only thing she could, check the surrounding barriers to make sure they weren't weakening to ward off any potential demon beast attack. After she made her rounds, she returned to her room at dawn, fell asleep, woke, and arrived at the present. Reem seemed to have left her alone at the mansion, heading off to the village in another attempt to persuade the villagers while Amelia slept. Technically speaking, given her position, Amelia would normally be expected to go with her, taking the lead and appealing to the villagers to evacuate.
But it might actually go better without me.
A feeling of shirked responsibility prodded Amelia to rise from bed. At the same time, she was deeply anxious about the possibility she would be shunned, which would make the situation worse. As a matter of fact, if Amelia had gone with Ram, the villagers would surely have rejected the proposal out of fear. That was reality of the situation. Amelia continued to slam into the wall the people used against those who were seen as strange and different. But to fight against that, maybe she should go into the forest herself.
Oh, Leah, someone's coming up to the mansion.
Ram, I suppose. I need to ask her how things went in the village.
Puck's call interrupted Amelia's thoughts. She quickly headed into the changing room. Normally, Puck was noisy about Amelia's grooming, but he hadn't been too picky for those last several days. But even this show of consideration became fuel for Amelia's growing self-hatred.
I'm going to visit Betty. Call me if something happens, Kay.
Yes, all right. Say hi to Beatrice for me.
As soon as Amelia stepped into the corridor, Puck split off to see the young-looking girl who, despite living under the same roof, didn't care much for showing her face. When Amelia thought about it, she hadn't seen the girl a single time since returning to the mansion.
Maybe Beatrice is angry I left Subaru behind.
Subaru and Beatrice got along rather well, so maybe she was upset. Negative thoughts seemed to keep bubbling up without end. Amelia sighed and set off for the entry hall at a brisk pace. She put off seeing Beatrice until later. There were many things she had to speak about with Ram.
Lady Amelia.
Amelia arrived in the hall just as the doorway to the mansion was opening. She exhaled a little when she saw Ram through the crack of the door.
Ram, I'm sorry for putting everything on your shoulders. I will make it up to you very soon.
No need, Lady Amelia. More importantly, you have guests.
Ram shook her head, interrupting Amelia as she moved aside, clearing a path to the door.
Huh?
Said Amelia as her eyes grew wide when figures came over the threshold.
Lady Amelia, please forgive our sudden visit.
It was a well-aged man with a sturdy physique who addressed Amelia with a bow. Amelia squinted slightly, recalling that she had seen his tall frame somewhere before. The memory came to her right after.
You were the gentleman who came with Ferris once, right?
Yes, I am called Wilhelm Trias, humble retainer of the House of Karsten. I have come today representing my liege.
The old man introduced himself in a dignified voice before dropping to one knee in a display of the utmost respect. Amelia, blushing at the sight, rushed down the remaining stairs that separated them to bid Wilhelm to rise. However, she immediately realized that something about him was bizarre. Smeared in blood and grime, the old man did not have the appearance she would associate with an official messenger.
Those clothes, what happened?
I apologize for the unsightly display. With some luck, I was fortunate enough to encounter a trifling demon beast while traveling to the Mathers domain. My atrocious appearance is the result.
I don't mind, but your wounds seem to have already been treated.
There is no need for concern. More importantly, I must properly communicate my master's will.
When Wilhelm suggested shifting the focus from himself to the topic at hand, Amelia acceded. The old man calling himself Cruchet's representative reminded Amelia of the letter that had arrived the night before.
Actually, last night, I received what was apparently a letter of goodwill from Lady Cruche. However, the letter was blank. I was concerned, wondering if there was some kind of mistake.
Blank, you say? I see. So it truly was blank.
What do you mean?
Wilhelm's blue eyes narrowed at his learning the contents of the letter. Sensing something strange in his demeanor, Amelia remained concerned as she instinctively echoed his words. But he immediately shook his head.
No, this is highly embarrassing, but that contradicts the letter my master originally sent. I know her thoughts well, and I assure you, there is no need for concern.
The original, I see. It actually was a mistake. I'm so glad that she doesn't hate me.
Amelia put a hand on her chest, relieved to hear someone close to Cruchoche firmly deny any ill will. The letter had arrived directly after the residents of the village had rejected her. On the one hand, she hadn't thought it was like Cruche. On the other, there had been some part of her that worried the head of the House of Karsten was acting out of contempt for half-elves. An anxious heart indulged in unnecessary doubts, which invited vulnerability. That was the state Amelia was in.
I sincerely apologize for the confusion. My master, Lady Cruche, is not the sort of person to engage in such rash acts, nor would she ever deem Lady Amelia worthless or someone to be ridiculed. Try as I might, I can say without reservation that I cannot conceive of such a notion.
Thank you very much. Then, what was the letter actually about?
The great amount of praise left Amelia surprised, but also a little happy. Her spirits rose slightly. As they did, Wilhelm retained his exceedingly polite posture as he answered.
Lady Amelia and Miss Ram, it is Lady Crush's opinion that those present in this mansion, as well as the residents of the village, should be temporarily evacuated from the area.
The announcement made Amelia's small smile freeze on her lips. Once Amelia recovered from the initial shock, Wilhelm continued his explanation.
Of late, we have received information that a criminal group known to the kingdom has infiltrated the Mathers domain. I have come representing a unit formed for the purpose of hunting down this group.
And those people are hiding in the forest around us. Is that what this is about?
Amelia blinked in surprise as the truth about the unrest even Ram's clairvoyance could not discern was revealed. As Wilhelm gravely nodded, Ram, standing beside him, nodded readily as well. Then Ram gave her own pink hair a gentle stroke as she spoke.
The envoy has already been taken into the Expeditionary Force's custody and has deployed in the village to prepare against enemy forces. But the enemy is the notorious Bandit King, so if fierce combat breaks out, damage to the surrounding area is unavoidable. Bandit King, we're supposed to evacuate then? That's why even dragon carriages were arranged for us.
According to Wilhelm, enough dragon carriages to carry Amelia, Ram, and every single villager had already entered the village to ready for their escape. Ram, having confirmed this with her own eyes, gave her seal of approval.
When everyone has been evacuated, our expeditionary force shall immediately exterminate them. Should the danger be swept away, you have my promise. You may return to your peaceful lives.
The rest of Wilhelm's explanation contained the details of the evacuation plan arranged for Amelia and the others. Amelia admired the unblemished goodwill, but she could not bring herself to politely leave everything to them. Of course, the proposal made perfect sense, and she had no intention of doubting them. But she also had some misgivings.
But why would Lady Crush do so much for the sake of this domain?
This land was squarely within the Mathers fiefdom, plus Amelia and Crush were political rivals for the throne. The goodness of her heart was probably not Crush's reason for acting. Amelia suspected there was something else. Wilhelm slightly lowered his voice as he responded to Amelia's doubts.
This is just between us, but we have a history with this criminal organization and cannot pretend the Bandit King is someone else's concern.
History with you, Sir Wilhelm?
Not just me. There are some youngsters who are champing at the bit to get at them as well. Besides,
Wilhelm's lips had slackened slightly into a smile but had vanished as he continued his explanation.
my master has been recognized by the Marquis as an ally for the duration this royal selection. The terms are the handing over of magic crystal mining rights for the great Iliar forest. Does this clarify matters for you?
I see, the rights to the forest. So that's how it is.
Even as Amelia accepted the words that followed, they shook her a little. While Amelia had been worrying about things all by herself, Rosewall had already worked in the darkness to prepare the best possible response. It was not that she didn't trust him, but it was something of a shock nonetheless.
But evacuating is easier said than done. Where will we go?
We have thought about this as well. This is connected to the earlier matter, but we would like you to head for the royal capital, Lady Amelia. Lady Crush is in the capital and desires a conference at which to seal the alliance.
Yes, that's all right. But is it possible to bring everyone to the capital?
The capital was about half a day's journey by dragon carriage. It would prove a difficult journey for the elderly and the very young villagers. It was also unclear how long it would take to eliminate the criminal organization, which raised her concerns about who would be able to accommodate them all. If this issue was dire enough to justify their leaving the area surrounding the manor, then
Perhaps it would be best if I assisted to drive the bandit king away sooner.
Lady Amelia, I am grateful that you would offer. However, that would be.
I may not look like much, but I'm confident in my modicum of skill. I have a really strong spirit with me, so I won't slow you down.
Amelia was referring to Puck, who wasn't present at the moment, as she offered her cooperation in the coming battle. Her words made Ram close her eyes as Wilhelm fell into thought for a time. She had attempted to propose something helpful, but for some reason, Amelia wasn't getting a very good reaction.
Is there a problem with that?
As a matter of punt, yes. Actually, the Marquis strictly demanded that I ensure Lady Amelia confers with Lady Cruche as soon as possible. If I fail in this duty, I shall be fired.
Roswell said that?
hearing that truly horrified Amelia. When Amelia stared toward Ram, questioning if it was true, Ram's light red eyes bore into the side of Wilhelm's face, staring.
Yes, that is indeed what Master Roswell said.
Roswell, what were you thinking?
Ram had sworn fealty to Roswell. She surely would not lie where her master was concerned. Apparently, he had earnestly worked to check any possible action, knowing that she could not defy him. The evacuation, the alliance, Roswell probably had everything dancing atop the palm of his hand. Seeing Amelia clenching her fists in frustration, Wilhelm breathed a sigh. The old man kept his eyes lowered as he spoke.
Certainly, Lady Amelia, as you stated earlier, evacuating everyone to the royal capital is a difficult undertaking. Given the current situation, let us evacuate half to the capital for the time being.
What about the other half, then?
Per my proposal, the other half shall evacuate to the sanctuary. Master Roswell is already headed there after all, and that place has sufficient space to shelter them and should be quite safe.
I see. You already have it all worked out. Then,
They had already thoroughly examined every concern and misgiving Amelia might have. They persevered, slapping down one doubt after another, until Amelia had no one. Zero Starting Life in Another World by Tapi Nagatsuki casted six-tale novel. Please subscribe to our channel.
room left to lodge any objections. This should have been a good thing. But the current Amelia could not help but feel tortured by an overwhelming sense of powerlessness. They had prepared answers to any question she might have, thought through whatever worries she might have, and if she did as she was told, everything would be taken care of through the goodwill of others. Hey, doesn't this come off as a little strange? Isn't it too good to be true? I beg your pardon.
Amelia's voice, seemingly bearing the weight of her doubts, was interrupted by the sound of the door violently opening. When she looked over in surprise, a young man had staggered into the entry hall, looking like he had just kicked the door in. The figure was wearing a white robe with a hood that covered him up to the top of the head. He cut in front of the wide-eyed Amelia and vigorously saluted Wilhelm.
There are signs of strange movements from the group lurking in the forest. We no longer have a moment to lose. If they move with the intent to slaughter, this entire area will become a hellish scene, a sea of blood.
Is that so? They seem to be moving quicker than we expected. With this many people entering the village, it was only a matter of time until they noticed, I suppose.
What shall we do, Captain? Sir Wilhelm, the Sword Devil.
Lady Amelia.
Once Wilhelm received the young man's reports, punctuated with unnecessary grandiose gestures, he stared sharply at Amelia. Amelia understood from his razor, like gaze, that time was short. Events were already in motion. Things had become urgent enough to make her think that time spent arguing was time wasted. It wasn't as though she suddenly had no doubts about various parts of the conversation so far. But it was a fact that Ram had sensed an ominous presence in the forest, and Wilhelm had given his word as a man under Cruche's banner concerning the incident involving the letter. More than anything, with Roswell currently absent, the right to make decisions for the well-being of the mansion and the village fell to Amelia.
The outcome would alter numerous human fates, and because of that, she had to see it through herself. That role was Amelia's to play at the moment. Duty had to come first.
Understood. I gratefully accept your kindness. As for explaining to the villagers,
Lady Amelia, this has already been taken care of without much issue.
Amelia, surprised at this fact, shifted her thoughts to the household. The existence of the final resident of the mansion, Beatrice, tugged at her mind. She had thought that if they were evacuating, then naturally they had to take Beatrice with them.
Beatrice said she was staying behind and would use the passage to isolate the archive of forbidden books, so you can evacuate or do whatever else you like on your own.
Puck.
Upon his sudden return, Puck explained the plans of his protégé, with whom he had already spoken. However, when the kitty landed on her shoulder, Amelia stared at him, shaking her head in disbelief.
How can you just accept that? They said this place is dangerous.
In Betty's case, she's much safer inside the archive. Besides, there's the issue of her pact preventing her from leaving the mansion. You understand, don't you?
It's really unfair to use that as a reason.
Puck groomed his whiskers as he responded to Amelia's dissatisfaction. To Amelia, to Puck, and to Beatrice as well, the word pact bore a great deal of meaning, to the point that it left Amelia unable to find the words for a comeback.
So that's why the girl who's like a cute little sister to me will stay behind at the mansion. It's best if you don't do anything to the mansion either. Betty may be a sweet, gentle child, but she won't show any mercy.
I shall take your words to heart, Great Spirit.
Wilhelm solemnly bowed in response to Puck's warning. Watching this with satisfaction, Puck buried himself in Amelia's hair. Then his voice became a whisper only Amelia could hear.
Do whatever you want to. I'm your ally and yours alone.
We will evacuate. I do not want to subject the villagers to any danger.
At her command, Ram grasped the hem of her skirt and politely curtsied, whereas Wilhelm strongly nodded. Then Amelia turned her back only upon the youth who had brought in the report.
That's just the way you are.
Amelia did not notice the youth's tiny murmur. By the time Amelia and Co. met up at the village, the residents had already begun preparing to evacuate. The villagers seemed to be politely obeying the expeditionary force, with nary a look of worry or concern on their faces, quite methodically proceeding with the work of loading up the dragon carriages.
Wilhelm and the others are amazing, aren't they?
Amelia was surprised at how, in contrast to her, they had deftly gained the trust of villagers they had never before met. But what surprised her the most came when she heard how the dragon carriages had been allotted. When she was guided to a dragon carriage for evacuation and was directed to climb aboard.
Please give us your best regards, miss.
With a conflicted look on her face, Amelia stood opposite a girl with reddish-brown hair who was bowing her head. She'd seen the face of the girl countless times in the village. The children were friendly with Subaru, but she'd seemed particularly fond of him. Amelia believed her name was Petra. Besides Petra, Amelia was surrounded by other children with faces familiar to her. Every last one introduced themselves to Amelia, who was to ride in the dragon carriage with them.
This is strange. Is there some kind of mistake?
No, this is the result of an exacting discussion. It cannot be helped. The balance of dragon carriages and numbers of people makes your riding with these children an unavoidable necessity, Lady Amelia.
But her reply was so contrary to Amelia's assumptions that it only served to fan her worries further. She would be spending numerous hours with the children in the closed quarters of a dragon carriage. It was less that this worried Amelia than that she thought it lacked consideration for the families of the children riding with her. She wondered if it would simply be hard on both sides.
You can't assign me a different dragon carriage to ride? I mean, the children would be better off that.
You assume anyone would be disgusted at having to ride with you. I take it?
Amelia's breath caught at having her inner thoughts read. It was the young man in the robe, the same one who had escorted Amelia and Ram all the way to the village, who had made the borderline offensive remark. Amelia, surprised, drew close to the youth, whose voice sounded faintly nervous and worked up.
Have you checked with these children to know? Or did you decide you were hated and detested all on your own?
Know that without having to ask, this is for everyone's sake.
1 dragon carriage, 6 children. How will your desires come true if you cannot even handle that?
How can you possibly?
When she began to speak harshly in a plaintive-sounding voice, the youth shifted his gaze away from Amelia to Petra. He got down on one knee before her, met her eyes, and quietly asked her,
How about it, Petra? Is the thought of riding the same dragon carriage as the miss hateful to you?
Amelia's cheeks stiffened, her heart pained as the cruel question fell upon her ears. It was a question with a readily apparent answer. His asking it could only be to hurt her, and even if you knew something would hurt, that didn't mean you got used to the pain. Puck had said it. Whatever form a wound might take, the only thing a new wound carried was a fresh helping of pain. Why, in spite of that, had this young man?
That's not true at all. I don't think riding with the miss is hateful at all.
Eh?
But with Amelia frozen stiff, Petra walked over, taking hold of her limp, dangling hand. Hot, her fingertips felt. With Amelia unable to conceal her surprise, Petra smiled bashfully toward her.
Miss, you're the young lady with the potato stamps, right? I saw you coming with Subaru for morning radio aerobics all the time.
That is.
I could never see your face, but you seem to be having fun. I not too, you know. I saw how Subaru had lots of fun talking to you. Subaru, really? Dolpha, I'm not afraid of you either, miss.
Listening to Petra's words, Amelia felt a pain deep in her nose, raising her voice. Heat welled up from deep within her eyes, too, and her throat suddenly caught. Her cheeks reddened, and her ears were so hot, they seemed to be burning.
Miss, won't you ride with us? Everyone's been saying to leave you alone, but I'll hold your hand, so... You don't have to feel lonely anymore, okay?
That innocent, pure, genuine gaze, disconnected from malice and irrationality, granted her salvation. To Amelia, estrangement was normal, persecution was inevitable, and discrimination taken for granted, so much so that she had been unable to sense the warmth in Petra's eyes and voice. That fact made her chest ache.
Me too. I want to be with the miss too. Come on, quick.
Other children made a clamor, running around Amelia however they pleased. As they did so, Ram immediately stuffed the children into the dragon carriage, a sight that got a little snort out of Petra.
Miss, let's go too. The others might be a little loud, though.
No, that's all right. It's been noisy around me for 2 months, so I'm used to it by now.
She shook her head, and she understood how the smile came over her as if by nature. Holding her hand, Petra led her along. The warmth of her hand made Amelia appreciate the closeness of another person.
Ram, take care of the sanctuary, please. Protect the villagers well.
As you wish. Be careful along the way yourself, Lady Amelia.
Grasping her skirt, Ram curtsied politely, nodding with a wry, pleasant smile on her face. After that, Amelia's gaze searched for the one who had made that exchange come about.
Allow me to express my thanks to you, Ezer.
She searched for the young man whose good offices had allowed her to break the ice. However, the white-robed youth was nowhere to be seen, leaving Amelia perplexed.
Where did he run off to?
Of those hearing Amelia's voice, sounding like she'd been left behind, Ram alone sank her shoulders in exasperation. The figure pushed its way through the branches, trampled the grass, and kept its posture low as it mingled with the green of the forest. Concealing himself in the dense, overgrown foliage, he suppressed his breathing and aura, blending in with the darkness. The residents of the tiny settlement some 300 feet or so beyond the forest were being evacuated and led away, so that they might escape the trial.
Yes! It was unforgivable. What threatened to occur was unconscionable. To prevent such a thing, the figure had thrown caution to the wind to observe their activities firsthand. The figure endured feelings of unease as multiple shadowy figures, remaining concealed at his command, gathered close with a slight sound of footsteps. Yes! Including the figure, they numbered 4, insufficient to launch a general attack, but plenty to slow them down. It was ahead of schedule, but like everything else, this was for the sake of their exalted aims.
He put a hand in his pocket and placed the small mirror retrieved from it atop his palm. However, its role differed from that of the cosmetic mirrors possessed by girls and women. Its role was to connect to different mirrors. It was a Michia, a magical mirror that allowed the user to converse over a long distance with another via the mirror on the other side. Though Michia were scarce by nature, conversation mirrors were numerous among them and comparatively easy to acquire. But even among the disciples, only a few possessed them. This was an honor reserved for the fingers, those whose faith had been recognized and who had been chosen as the Lord Archbishop's confidants. Remaining silent, he poured magical energy into the conversation mirror, causing the Misha to activate. It was a process the figure had undertaken several times in the preceding few hours, sending detailed reports about the resources he'd accompanied so that preparations could be made for the trial that must come. Accordingly, an emergency situation like this absolutely had to be reported. The figure had to communicate with its brethren about the fact that the resources' movements had greatly shifted. They had noticed the movements of his brethren and were nefariously attempting to flee.
I see. It was a big mystery how you got in touch with the others, but I guess Mechia are super convenient. Although I think it's important in communication to show your face to the other party, don't you?
Suddenly, one of the brethren crouched alongside peered into the conversation mirror, tossing such words his way. The figure hastily looked over, and the next moment, he was stricken by a sense of extreme unease. The other party was right next to him, and yet the figure still could not discern the features of the other person's face. It was as if something was stopping his brain from understanding what he was seeing.
You don't distinguish by face, you distinguish by physical nature. When it comes to that, you and I are like girls in a knitting circle wearing the same perfume. Gives me chills, you piece of shit bastard.
As the white-robed brethren spoke, he stood up, practically spitting out the declaration. Then, in front of him, Ketty, the witch cultist, frozen stiff in surprise. The brethren pulled down his hood, revealing rare black hair and foul-looking eyes with the white of the sclera surrounding 3 sides of each iris. 3 white's eyes.
Your sin is grave, you know, getting in the way of my sentimental reunion with Amelia and all that.
As the black-haired youth prattled on with frivolity, a taunting, impetuous smile came over his mouth. The next instant, the indecipherable enchantment surrounding the youth fell away. Ketty's eyes could now plainly make out the youth's features, bringing his identity to light. The features of the traitor who had led the expeditionary force to their doorstep, making a plan that he would oppose them. With the most unforgivable of foes before him, Ketty reflexively leaped to his feet. There was no need to even look at the 2 brethren to his sides. They would launch a combined assault on the apostate before them. However, the instant he drew the cross-shaped blade on his hip, a lower-tone whisper grazed his ear.
Too slow.
The next moment, a silver flash raced into the corner of his field of vision, and the brethren to his right and left gushed blood as they crumbled. Their necks had been slashed. It was obvious the blows had been fatal. And then it was Katie's turn.
I recommend that you do not resist. I do not intend to inflict unnecessary pain.
His efforts had been completely forestalled by the cold tip of a blade against the back of his neck. Behind him stood a slender knight, and the aged swordsman who had cut down his 2 brethren. In addition, a cat-eared demi-human stood behind them, all of them brought by the black-haired traitor.
Yes! Subaru Natsuki!
Oh, I guess it's obvious, but, wow, witch cultists really do talk. That's a big help.
Shoved against the ground with his arms pinned behind him, Ketty glared up at him, the traitor, Subaru Natsuki. The youth on the receiving end had an outbreak of cold sweat on his brow. He turned to the other 3 and spoke.
Well, at least it went without a hitch. Thanks for the assist.
I admit to half-doubting you, but having read them properly this far, I cannot but admit you were correct. If they have been made to dance as you expect, our advantage shall only grow greater.
Isn't that pretty much a given? Meow. We started evacuating the village so much earlier than expected that it made him try contacting them in a big hurry.
As the knight and the demi-human concurred with the youth's words, Ketty's head was in chaos, filled with hatred and incomprehension. He didn't understand the meaning of their conversation. It was as if they'd known every last thing and
Your face says you don't get it. Well, that can't be helped. This time we're way too good at running rings around you. Oh, and thank you for helping our disinformation efforts, not that you actually realized you were a double spy.
the gist is, we totally knew you were a spy. As for how we found you, trade secret. So we went through the trouble of laying a trap for the witch cult scout, in other words, you. Katie was still, eyes wide open, as Subaru Natsuki closed one eye and slowly spelled it out. And then he stated,
2 hours. You reported to your pals that we were 2 hours behind schedule.
Raising up 2 fingers, he wagged them left and right. Katie's eyes remained wide with shock as Subaru continued.
During that time, we'll get Amelia and the others out of here. During that time, we'll crush the fingers flat. During that time, we'll prepare to squish your precious Archbishop flat.
At the end of those words, a bold smile came over Subaru Natsuki, and then he issued his declaration of war.
I'm gonna give you a real good taste of the terror of being crushed by someone 3 steps ahead of you.
Returning to the time when the Expeditionary Force continued its moving conference through the use of Nect,
We finally know there's a spy in our midst. If we can make good use of him and feed him false info, we can give Amelia and the others time to flee to safety. Don't you think so?
Subaru spoke thus as he divulged a series of information while on the road toward the Mathers domain. During the time the Expeditionary Force's thoughts were shared via magic, this opinion sent vigorous arguments flying back and forth. While nodding at their various thoughts, Subaru raised a hand and spoke.
Hey, listen, just like we talked about, wiping out the fingers is non-negotiable for kicking the Archbishop of the 7 deadly sins butt. That said, even just taking out those fingers is easier said than done. We have to be smart about this.
Purportedly, making use of your physical condition would allow us to draw out and fight the fingers, one by one.
I can guarantee it. But either way, the fact that they have a spy means whatever we do will get passed on to the enemy. Even if we take out the spy first, they'll know something's up when he misses the regular time to call, so it amounts to the same thing. So I was thinking we flip this around on them and leak intel for him to send them. Fake intel.
As he replied to Julius, Subaru recalled the sight of the village being raided at the end of his last go-around. At the time, every last enemy had launched a combined attack on the village from the forest. Given the numbers of raiders, he was sure he was right in thinking so, and also that Patelgeuse had possessed the finger hiding among the traveling merchants. In other words, the traveling merchant named Ketty, the witch cultist, embedded with them. One way or another, he was in contact with the fingers. Likely, unlike the other witch cultists accompanying Patelgeuse, he'd been assigned the duty of gathering intelligence about the surrounding area.
That's why we should turn this back on them. If we fool the spy, we fool the whole witch cult.
So that is why you wish to send Rajan and his group to the traveling merchants and tell them the rendezvous will be delayed?
Subaru's roundabout statement seemed to clear up Ricardo's doubts, bringing him to agree. Just like last time around, a small detachment of the Iron Fangs would be sent to greet the traveling merchants cooperating with the evacuation. But this time, those select few would deliver a rendezvous time with Subaru's ruse attached. Before the witch cult spy could rendezvous with the Expeditionary Force, they'd dispose of a mountain of concerns he wanted dealt with beforehand, making it a race against time. Incidentally, Subaru had recommended the Foxman and his team casualties from the last time around for those select few, hoping to keep them far from the fight.
So this is less of a proposal and more an update after the fact. You have such a naughty personality, Sabawu. It's like we're talking about the little lady. No peaceful death down that path, you know.
Setting Ferris aside, what's with Ricardo's assessment of his employer?
Ricardo was the one working for her, but his appraisal of Anastasia was harsh. The boisterously laughing thought that followed right after made Subaru assume it was simple, light-hearted banter. At any rate, the operation to confuse the spy was already underway, and, accepting this,
Then our counterespionage plan is settled. Incidentally, what is the source of this information?
How about I say my nose for the witch cult?
That is a thin basis, but I shall take that as meaning you have one. That is my reply.
Julius responded to Subaru's usual vague explanation with his own difficult-to-decipher inner thought. The thoughts he passed through Necht were opaque compared to those of the others, perhaps because it was his own magic. But there was no room to doubt the truth of his willingness to cooperate, so it would do for the moment.
That's fine, but what about the issue with the letter? Leaving it at just the blank page makes things difficult. Why? If it's completely blank, you can write whatever you want on it. Seems convenient, too. Ouchie. Sis, please be quiet.
The cat siblings were the next ones to wedge themselves into the telepathic conversation. Actually, behind the telepathic exchange, a torrent of light-hearted thoughts flowed out from Mimi, but everyone was taking that in stride. For his part, TB was paying serious attention to the operation. Subaru drew his chin in during the kitty siblings' exchange, thinking over how to deal with the blank letter. After all, thanks to that problem, Ram had launched a surprise attack on the expeditionary force, costing it precious time. The operation was in part a race against time, so a loss like that was to be avoided at all costs.
What should we do, then?
TB sent over an ashen, nervous thought, wanting to hear a plan to deal with it. Others beside him also turned their minds towards Subaru, waiting for his reply. At the center of that attention, Subaru folded his arms and told them how they would deal with the blank letter, and that method was... In the early morning, just as the world began to awaken, Ram lifted her head, sensing an indecipherable presence. She was midway along the road, cutting through open fields that stretched from the mansion to Earlham Village. Since Amelia had faced a bad experience with the villagers, Ram had left her back at the mansion on her way to prod and persuade the villagers to evacuate. There was a slight rustle in the forest. Ram knotted her shapely brows as she sank into thought for a single moment. Ram was a demon who had lost her horn. By nature, demons were acutely sensitive to changes in the forest and mountains. A sixth sense that differed from the other five informed her of a shift in the wind blowing from the direction of the highway. Her small nose snorted. Ram, confirming that there was no hint of danger in the immediate vicinity, went down on one knee and concentrated on her forehead. She was activating her supernatural ability of clairvoyance. Clairvoyance was a secret art passed down among the demons that enabled them to synchronize with the vision of others, stealing their vision and seeing through their eyes. Few demons had mastered the art to begin with. Currently, Ram was probably the only one. While it was activated, her awareness of her own surroundings was greatly diminished, limiting the places she could use it, but it was the crown jewel of reconnaissance abilities. The master to whom Ram had pledged fealty had many enemies. For that reason, too, the supernatural ability was very helpful. She disconnected herself from those deep feelings, concentrating the effect of her supernatural ability and entered the vision of others. Even where there were no people to affect, that was no hindrance so long as there were living creatures with a sense of sight. However, creatures with compatible wavelengths were limited, and in the past few days, she had been unable to grasp anything inside the forest where it mattered most. However, that was not the case this time. She detected multiple compatible wavelengths from the direction of the highway that connected to the village. She entered one of them, seeing through its eyes. The creature from which she borrowed that sight was a humanoid riding a giant beast of war, a great dog known as a ligger. The rider was small in stature, slowly surveying the area with ferocious energy. He was not on guard, but nor was he at ease. It was a power to see through the eyes of others. Naturally, his moving in contrast to Ram's will inflicted motion sickness upon her. Ram immediately shifted to a different set of eyes from the next compatible vision, ascertaining the situation anew. Fortunately, this set of eyes politely stared straight at the road ahead. The height of his gaze matched that of the previous set of eyes. And he too was riding a giant dog. She could scarcely tell the difference. However, that doubt evaporated when a great throng entered her borrowed field of view. They were a group of 40 or 50 people, each and every one armed. They galloped along the highway, tens of minutes away from the village, and she recognized the crest of the lion rampant on the armor of several of the armored men. This was the crest of the House of Karsten, proof they were of the same faction that had declared war via the blank letter the night before. In other words, it was offensive action by a rival in the royal selection.
Seizing on Master Roswell's absence to make their move, I understood that it was an emergency situation, urgent circumstances demanding an immediate decision. If their goal was to inflict damage upon the Amelia camp, they would surely occupy Earlham Village. I had to strike before that could happen, using every means available to me.
And just when Ram gritted her teeth, ready to cut the clairvoyant connection and race to the village,
Huh?
she let out a dumbstruck voice. Her feet, ready to set off in a sprint, stopped, and Ram's face grimaced extensively at the sight she beheld through the clairvoyance. It was that painful to comprehend just what she was seeing. A black-haired young man rode a land dragon at the forward tip of the formation, carrying a sign that he turned in every direction, as if to ensure it could be seen from front, back, left, and right.
Barusu?
Upon that placard was written in large characters, "The letter is wrong. My bad." Carrying those words in the manner of a white flag, Subaru and the rest of the expeditionary force arrived at Earlham Village without incident. However, when Ram appeared to greet them, she had a sour look on her face, and Subaru awkwardly shrank as he stood before her. Ram instantly snorted out as she spoke.
First you send a blank letter, and now you appear at the head of an armed band? You do not appear to comprehend exactly whose domain this is.
But you didn't lodge a preemptive strike. That means there's room to talk about this, right?
That sign was a message for me, obviously. I am the only one who would understand such a thing.
Ram sighed in visible exasperation as she set eyes on the wooden placard Subaru carried at his side. An apology in huge eye script was written on the sign in white paint. This was the master plan Subaru had developed mid-March for countering the blank letter of goodwill, or rather, he'd responded with the blunt truth.
I should beat you senseless. The characters are so sloppy that I was nearly unable to read them.
Hey, you taught me these characters. Aren't you used to seeing them by now?
Unfortunately, I forgot about them as quickly as an ingrate forgets the generosity shown to him.
Ein.
Ram's characteristically harsh statement left Subaru hemming and hawing. Unable to give any retort, watching his reaction, she folded her arms and continued her lecture.
So, according to what I have heard, Barusu, you soured Lady Amelia's mood in grand fashion, and she abandoned you in the royal capital. How dare you return to show your face?
You really have no mercy, do you? I'm not going to argue with each and every point, but here I am, daring to return and show my face. Not that I came back empty-handed.
With a hand, he indicated the expeditionary force lined up behind him to put his exploits from the royal capital on display. Subaru's declaration caused Ram to narrow her eyes. As she proceeded to survey the expeditionary force, she spoke.
It is fine to boast, but as your objective is unclear, the humans of the village are on guard. I too am concerned that anything might happen. My songbird heart is merely ready to burst.
You mean your heart has wings sprouting from it? Doesn't that make it a really strong heart?
If you make too many wisecracks, I shall slice that nose off your face.
Man, it's been a few days and this reunion feels really off-kilt. Wait, my nose?
The savage declaration sent Subaru covering his face and backing off a step as his gaze shifted from Ram to the village behind her. Of course, the ruckus was such that the villagers noticed the expeditionary force immediately, whereupon they turned concerned eyes toward the knights lined up in the village square. However,
Hey, at the head of them, that's Master Subaru, isn't it? It really is. That's Master Subaru speaking to Miss Ram. He's come back?
Ah, it's Subaru. He's back.
the villagers' wariness relented slightly when they realized Subaru was acting as the group's representative. Thanks to that, in their eyes, the group was upgraded from never before seen to under the command of someone we know.
And now we have to upgrade that to reliable reinforcements brought by someone we know.
That is no simple matter. In the first place, I have not yet accepted all of this. I cannot readily believe that a letter bearing a wax seal was merely an error.
That's part of the enemy's trap. You notice the jerks hiding in the forest, right?
Subaru lowered his voice to a whisper. Ram kept silent with a sober look on her face. It was plain as day that both the witch cult lurking in the forest and the blank letter incident had put Ram on guard the last time around. Subaru addressed Ram's concerns as he moved the conversation forward.
Ferris, Wilhelm, over here! Ram, you know both of them too, right?
Obeying Subaru's call, the pair came over to his side. Yes, said Ram, looking over Ferris and Wilhelm as they stood side by side. Her expression vanished as she straightened her back. The pair from Krush's camp acknowledged Rem's posture by granting her their respect.
I am called Wilhelm Trias. I have come as Lady Krush's representative.
I'm Ferris, Lady Krush's personal knight. Old Man Will's the captain of the group behind us, so that makes Fairy the vibrant flower. Meow.
The austere Wilhelm and the flippant to the last Ferris were a shining example of polar opposites. Ram responded to both extremes by politely grasping the hem of her skirt and making a formal curtsy.
I graciously accept your polite greetings. I am called Ram. I am employed here at the mansion of Marquis Roswal El Mathers in the capacity of senior servant.
Ram's cheekiness in naming herself senior servant made Subaru grimace, but he held his tongue. Ram was indisputably in charge of the mansion while Rem was absent. Personally, he would have preferred she call herself acting senior servant, or if not senior for a day, then at least senior servant for the last week, but oh well.
Either way, these two and the people behind us are proof that Krush is cooperating with us. This is what Roswal wants, too. No complaints, right?
If Master Roswal wills it, Ram shall obey. It would seem he accomplished his objective in leaving you behind at the capital, though I believe he shall have your head for the blank letter, Barusu.
Hey, can you cut it with the violent imagery? Why do you have such a brutal thought process?
He felt like he was back in medieval times, but Ram freshly ignored his complaints. Instead, she turned toward the representatives of the reinforcements.
So you have been traveling with my apprentice servant. My condolences.
Though he is prone to exorbitant actions and showing too much of his emotions, Sir Subaru is a person of high promise. Even at my age, he has aided me many times.
Fairy won't go as far as Old Man Will, but, well, I'll just take Ram's words as they were offered. I'll say, I think he's brushed up a little. Meow.
The assessments from Wilhelm and Ferris made Ram sigh with an even more grudging look on her face. Though the topic was a rather uncomfortable one, Subaru scratched his cheek, glossing over how he really felt. Immediately after, he clapped his hands together and started over, explaining the situation to Ram in detail.
Anyway, leave smashing the enemies in the forest to the expeditionary force. I want you to cooperate with that and something in a different direction. Are you willing?
That depends on the details. I do not wish to make a hasty promise, only to have Barusu's filthy, poisonous fangs sink into me.
Hey, the looks I give you aren't that dirty, you know.
That's a boy for you, not saying it was zero.
Faced with Ram's poisoned tongue, Ferris's casual banter and stern eyes shifted his way. Subaru cleared his throat. From there, having kept them waiting long enough, he elucidated the circumstances required, both in front of and behind the curtain, to make his plan come to fruition.
I want your help in picking where to evacuate the people in the village and to guide them there. I want to make sure not to involve the villagers while we fight the enemies in the forest.
I understand what you are saying. However, we have no means of escape.
I've arranged the legs to carry him out on. From here on out, traveling merchants with dragon carriages will be assembling here, bit by bit, from every direction. We'll have the villagers get aboard and haul him out.
Assembled from all directions? How?
Money? We'll just have to eat the costs, okay?
Subaru's insurance policy had cost a great deal of money. The treasury paying it was Roswal's, and on top of that, it was without his having granted permission. Ram sighed deeply when she discerned that from Subaru's manner of speech.
Understood. I will support your effort. It is an emergency. After all.
Seriously? Huge help. Worst case, I was gonna have to promise to pay it back when I make it big.
Only those who are fit to actually rise to prominence may promise such a thing. However, Ram's consent is by no means the end of the matter.
After giving a stern assessment about his future prospects, Ram shifted an even sterner look over her shoulder. Subaru didn't need to follow her gaze. He knew exactly what Ram was trying to tell him. The people of Earlham Village were behind Ram, still anxious about their situation. Even if Ram was willing to lead them out, convincing them would prove the highest hurdle of all. He had prior experience from the last go-around, but the result of that effort still tasted bitter in his mouth. The closest word he had to describe the emotion summoned by that memory was fear. He'd only scratched the surface of the discrimination and repudiation facing Emilia. Time was short, precious time gained from feeding false information to the witch cult. And yet, Subaru hesitated, wondering what the first words out of his mouth ought to be.
Subaru, if you can't do it, I'll...
Ferris.
When Ferris tried to be considerate to Subaru, offering to speak in his place, Wilhelm called his name. A single glance from the sword devil halted Ferris's gesture in its tracks. He turned his eyes towards Subaru and spoke.
Sir Subaru, this is not a duty you may shirk. You understand, yes?
When Wilhelm asked this in a low voice, Subaru winked once and nodded firmly. Subaru gave Ferris a thankful glance for his concern before stepping past Ram and advancing straight into the village square. To the front were the villagers with worried faces. To his back were his comrades in the expeditionary force. He felt the tension from both stab into him. As for the first words out of his mouth, those very important words, he still hadn't decided. But he would begin with the best word for wiping away the villagers' concerns and fears.
Every you!
Master Subaru, please let us drop all pretenses. Everyone in the village understands.
However, Subaru couldn't even get that first word out. The one speaking, interrupting Subaru's word without a plan, was the cornerstone of the village, a small-statured, white-haired elderly man. He was the one the villagers called Morosa, a name in no way related to his occupation as village headman. Normally, his demeanor made one suspect he was a senile old man, but at that moment, his voice and gaze held no trace of that whatsoever. Subaru felt overwhelmed by the glint in his eye as the elder touched his beard and continued.
We understand how dire things must be if you have brought such dangerous persons to deal with it. We have already heard from Miss Ram about the suspicious presence in the forest.
No, that's...
Stop trying to fool us. We knew before anyone said a word.
Following in Morosa's wake, the leader of the village's young men raised a bitter cry. The last go-around, his plea had been the trigger for the villagers to put their fears and anxieties on display. This time proved no different.
So the ones in the forest, they really are. What's with our Lord? Didn't he foresee that this would happen? Why did the Lord speak in support of a half-elf, of a half-demon?
The young man's cry ripped the bandage off, causing the villagers to look at one another and share their fears and worries. It was the sight Subaru had most feared and had most wanted to avoid. It was the worst of all spectacles, for even with an intervening return by death, and so many valiant efforts to deal with so many things, he still hadn't known how to stop things from getting to this point.
I probably couldn't eliminate such a deep-seated discriminatory mindset in that one moment. When I recalled events from the last time around, I thought that a similar compromise would make things easier. Considering the menace posed by the witch cult, the right decision was to kick other issues down the road. If I gained their grudging acceptance, prioritizing the evacuation, then... The girl I know, she acts tough, she's stubborn, hard-headed, and she worries about anyone seeing that she's lonely.
The words Subaru spoke seemed wholly unrelated to his inner thought process. The villagers gazed in bewilderment, wondering what in the world Subaru was saying. The members of the expeditionary force had similar reactions. However, their expressions of surprise abated as they listened closely. They offered their ears, listening to Subaru's words.
She always chooses to hurt herself for someone else's sake. Even though she gets hurt so easily, she always picks the path that winds up with her getting hurt. She's gentle and kind-hearted to the core. She fusses over things like a little kid. She gets teary-eyed even when she hasn't eaten a green pepper. She makes such a cute face when she smiles.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about Emilia, the half-elf up at the mansion.
When someone interrupted, Subaru replied with a calm voice. His answer surprised the villagers. The little smile coming over Subaru's lips surprised them even more. Given the circumstances and their words of distress, but a few moments before, his reaction seemed very much out of place.
I understand why you're worried. Also, that you think the cause of everything is R, Master Rosewall, your lord, and his support of a half-elf girl in the royal selection that began at the royal capital. That girl's name is Amelia. Really, you all know her already, don't you? She's the girl who's been spending months alongside you.
Subaru's exhortation made the villagers exchange glances. From their reactions, there had to be recognition remaining within their memories. Even if all that time her face and her identity had been hidden, they'd seen her with Subaru in the village many times, and at the very least, they remembered the time they'd spent with her.
I understand that you're all worried and scared. I also understand that when the chips are down, it feels good to blame things on something that's easy to understand.
It was human instinct to protect the mind by slamming the emotions into something nearby. Subaru could not criticize them for that. He, of all people, didn't have the right to do so, but he chastised himself. His heart was tormented because he understood this so well. Once upon a time, Subaru had coped with pain the way the villagers were doing in the present.
I'm sure, though, you all actually understand. Pushing your worries onto someone else won't make things better. That girl is someone who smiled with everyone. That girl is someone who wants to laugh with everyone. I know. She said so. I want you to stop ignoring that and stop hurting her.
He had no confidence that his own voice lacked worry and sorrow. He wanted to punch himself for having the gall to say such a thing. After all, it was Subaru who had hurt Amelia, ignored her feelings, and trampled upon her heart more than anyone. He'd regretted it at the time. The grief had pierced Subaru's chest ever since. Maybe that was why. He regretted allowing her to make that face. He regretted making her put on that face. He didn't want anyone else to go through that.
Please, I'm begging you.
Subaru lowered his head toward the villagers as he made his earnest plea. The thing he was asking seemed completely unrelated to their most imminent problems, a waste of precious time. Even though Subaru had to speak to them about evacuating, his words were about something completely different. It was as if he was reconfirming for himself just what terrible things had been said to Amelia over and over. Indeed, the villagers looked conflicted, at a loss as to what reaction they ought to have to Subaru's words. Even if it had been the topic they were speaking about, the conclusion clashed with the issue at hand. Mutual bewilderment left them perplexed. However, that was not the only thing born from it.
Petra?
Hearing the sound of small footsteps, Subaru called out the name of the little girl walking to his side. The girl with reddish-brown hair, Petra, was a village girl. Subaru knew well. She responded to Subaru's call with a nod as she reached Subaru's side, turning around as she stood to face the villagers with him. Then her next words proved that she did not only seem to be taking his side, she was.
Why won't anyone listen to what Subaru's saying?
It was guileless. It was brutally honest. That was why her chastising tore a hole into their hearts.
Subaru's so worried, he looks about to cry. Why won't anyone help him?
That's...
When I was in trouble, when everyone was in trouble, Subaru came through, didn't he? He'll probably come through for us today too, right? Then why?
Adults had too many walls up to launch the attack called innocence that only children were capable of. With the adults cowed into silence, Petra gazed sadly at them before grasping Subaru's hand.
The older girl at the mansion, that's the girl always wearing white, isn't it? She was the one bringing potato stamps when we did the radio aerobics.
Yeah, that's right. She was the stamp girl. She wanted to mingle with everyone, but she couldn't just come out and say so. That's just how she is.
Subaru grinned as Petra's words brought him back to the peaceful days they'd spent together. It became a ritual. Every day, Amelia would accompany Subaru down to the village and do radio aerobics with the villagers. Amelia was always watching when Subaru gave his stamp of approval with the potato stamps he'd carved himself. These everyday scenes were the tangible bonds Amelia had formed with the villagers. That fact made understanding and hesitation rise upon the adults' faces. But no adult grumbling or hesitation had any traction with children. Other hands rose as different children rushed over to Subaru's side.
I'm okay with Big Sis too. If Petra's fine with her, then I'm fine with her. We won't let Big Bro be the only one to act cool. Subaru's gonna cry, so we've gotta help him. Yeah.
The children made a ruckus. Their voices seemed to blow the previous atmosphere away. Seeing the children lined up against them, the anxiety-ridden adults glanced at each other's faces. They needed one final push. Faced with their indecision, Subaru stepped forward. With both arms, he held onto the children, pulling them in as tightly as he could.
I don't expect everyone to accept her just like that, but I want an opportunity without you rejecting her at the start. I want you to give her a chance.
A chance.
A chance to be a girl you can get along with. A chance for you to understand each other.
As Subaru elaborated on his words, his hands let go of the children he had held, freeing him to get on his knees and show that his resolve went far beyond bowing. Even Ram's eyes widened as murmurs spread. But of all assembled, it was Wilhelm Ferris and the other members of the expeditionary force behind Subaru who watched his entreaty in silence. It was enough. Though it was embarrassing, he had no reason to hesitate.
Everyone, there's a lot of things I'd like to say, but right now, this is the only thing I want to ask of you. And one thing more, let us protect the time needed to make that chance happen. Please, this is why I came back.
His voice came to a halt. The villagers were silent. That was to be expected. As far as they were concerned, Subaru was their savior, yet there he was, pressing his own forehead to the ground as he made his plea, a plea to let them protect. Their positions were completely reversed. But the sight of the Subaru, they knew like that was...
Oh geez, Master Subaru, there's just no winning against you.
Speaking those words, and roughly scratching his head in the process, was none other than the leader of the young men who had caused their eruption of worry to begin with. He had a guilty look on his face as he walked over to Subaru and reached out with a hand. A dumbstruck Subaru gazed blankly as that hand grabbed his shoulder and pulled him to his feet. Then, with Subaru having yet to say anything, he spoke.
If you're gonna say you'll protect us and put that much into it, guess it can't be helped.
The conflicted young man's statement was as contagious as the initial worry had been. His words were the trigger for the villagers to say with quaking voices,
It is so terrible getting old. I'm driven to tears so easily. Goodness, he really is so much trouble. It's blackmail, I tell you.
Complain as they might, the warmth and relief in their voices left Subaru agape. Petra thrust a finger against his forehead, still smeared with dirt, and spoke.
Subaru, your face is all dirty.
Petra's words sent the uncontrollable urge to laugh spreading throughout the village. He knew it was a stretch. He thought they'd say it was too far, and yet they'd accepted his plea anyway. The villagers' smiling faces made Subaru sigh with relief. Truly, the sight was the same as on the days they'd spent to date.
Thanks, everyone.
That is our line, Master Subaru.
This time, the words of Murosa, representing the consensus of the village, nearly did bring Subaru to tears. And 'twould have been a far prettier tale if the matter had ended there, but...
Am I mistaken? Or did you not actually say anything about the most important part?
Subaru was trying to hide his half-tearful face when Ram's impartial observation snapped him out of it. Reflecting upon her words, he realized that he really hadn't explained any of the most important part at all. He was so focused on the parts relating to Amelia that he'd completely forgotten about the plan to evacuate the villagers.
Oh man, I messed up.
Just when I thought you had become somewhat useful, it seems Barusu will be Barusu.
Feeling Ram's disappointed gaze, Subaru, unable to summon any excuse, immediately turned back around to explain things to the villagers. It cannot be helped, said Ram to him, shaking her head as she spoke.
I shall explain about the evacuation and accompanying compensation in your place. Barusu, return to your underhanded schemes.
That's all right. You'll be all right?
It is you who are not all right, Barusu. Can you switch to speaking to the village's humans about practical matters in a heartbeat? Your personality is hardly suited to it.
Suppose you're right. It's embarrassing, but I'm counting on you, older sis.
Ram was basking in his respectful words when she cocked her head with a questioning look. Then she headed toward the villagers. This was Ram, blessed with a great deal of comprehension and insight. Tossing the rest of the explanation to her would doubtlessly turn out all right. This done, the next issue was,
Subaru, I would like to finally move the issue forward.
Julius said that just as Subaru was switching mental gears. Subaru greeted his words with a nod and headed back to the Expeditionary Force ranks. They had to shift to the next phase of the operation. Upon his return, Ferris smiled at Subaru and casually sent a wave his way.
Subaru, you did great with that speech. You moved even Fairy's heart.
Don't dig it back up. And don't lie. And really don't dig that up. It's embarrassing.
There is nothing to be ashamed of. You very much said it in your own way, and because of that, you moved the hearts of the villagers to such an extent.
Don't dig it back up. Leave it in the ground. We're talking about the next operation.
Subaru yelled both at Ferris, clearly full of malice, and Julius, clearly devoid of malice, as he dragged the topic back. Events to come would proceed as they'd hammered out in mid-March. Once convincing the villagers was taken care of, they'd rendezvous with the detachment with the traveling merchants and evacuate the civilians. During that time, they needed to deal with feeding false info to the witch cult and
Deceive Lady Amelia with a forked tongue and shoo her far, far away with the people of the village. Meow.
Watch how you say it. Even if it fits the plan, it sounds way too bad that way.
Because I can't agree with it, meow. Why do you need to send Lady Amelia far away? Lady Amelia has both a reason to fight and the power to do so, am I wrong?
of the entire plan, this was the only point Ferris saw fit to disagree with. Subaru and Ferris didn't see eye to eye on Amelia's place in the plan. When he thought back, Ferris was the one who had brought Amelia into battle during the final fight in the village. Ram seemed to have helped convince her, but Ferris's assessment of Amelia's power might have proven correct. At least, as far as Amelia's having the power to slug it out with even Pateljuice.
Even so, I don't want to let Amelia fight the witch cult.
Ha, we're talking past each other.
Seeing Ferris slump his shoulders with an exasperated air made Subaru feel bad, but he wouldn't take back his view. It was the one thing he would not budge on. Subaru's selfishness, or rather the deep-rooted bad premonition in his chest, made him want Amelia kept away from the witch cult by extreme measures if need be. The premonition was probably founded in the look on the side of Amelia's face when she defeated Betelgeuse at the end of the last time around. The madman's death had made tears trickle for reasons even she did not understand.
Ferris, Sir Subaru has his own feelings on the matter. Sir Subaru has his desires where Lady Amelia is concerned, just as you have your expectations for Lady Crush. It is doubtless you prefer some outcomes over others. Surely you can understand his earnest feelings.
It was Wilhelm who interjected, having held his peace during the dispute up to that point. The old swordsman's words made Ferris's cheeks tighten. He subconsciously touched the dagger on his hip.
Just as you adore Lady Crush, Sir Subaru wishes for Lady Amelia's well-being. A boy is concerned for the welfare of the girl he loves. It is only nature.
Having it said that bluntly makes me feel a little blushy and pathetic, but
Subaru scratched his cheek, welcoming Wilhelm's support with a pathetic look. Ferris had a pouting look on his face, but he did not offer any further rebuttal. The knights around them gave Subaru warm looks as well.
anyway, we're gonna do this just like we worked out. We'll set up the scenario so Amelia listens to reason. Ferris, Wilhelm, I'm counting on you for some really persuasive backup.
Understood.
Sure thing.
When the two freshly acknowledged their role as persuaders, Subaru cut the conversation off then and there. If Ram pulled off convincing the villagers, the remaining issues were relatively few. Subaru turned around and spoke.
Okay, Julius, about that favor I asked about earlier, how is...
Do you mean me? I've been listening the whole time.
Everyone's breath caught as a third party's voice interjected at that juncture, the very end of the exchange. Subaru, the only one who realized the identity of the speaker, naturally looked up, and then...
Heya, long time no see, Puck. How have you been?
He smiled toward Puck, the little cat swishing his tail as he floated in the sky. The presence of the suddenly appearing Great Spirit surprised the expeditionary force, putting it extremely on edge.
Puck, glancing at their reaction, accepted Subaru's greeting with a stroke of his own whiskers as he spoke.
I'm in a very good mood. Right now, I can easily dispose of an insect pestering my beloved daughter.
This is an awkward question, but this insect to which you refer.
Do you really need to ask?
Puck's eyes remained round as a ghastly, overpowering aura poured from his entire body. That sense of antagonism made tension run through not only Subaru, but the entire expeditionary force as well. The knights, sensitive to hostility, immediately put their hands to the hilts of their swords, an understandable reaction. Though he was bathed in their wary stares, Puck's ghastly aura did not relent as he continued.
Subaru, I have a few things to say to you. Do you know what they are?
I broke my promise to Emilia. On top of that, I came back against her orders. Those are my sins, and I won't make any excuse for them.
Subaru's reply made Puck's cheeks twitch. These were Subaru's answers to the questions. Puck had tossed his way. For once already he had experienced that pop quiz when he drew Puck's ire. At the time, Subaru had been unable to say anything to the enraged Puck. He'd hurt Emilia through his own selfish actions, and as a result had let her die. He couldn't speak a single word. That was why.
Of course you're angry at me for all that. If your mind won't be set at ease until you punish me, I'm prepared to accept and face whatever punishment you have to give. But now is not the time.
He'd broken his promise, trampled on her pleas, and Subaru had added to those sins by coming back. But he absolutely would not permit the final and worst among them, letting her die, come to pass.
Danger's nipping at Emilia's heels. I want to do something about it. I want to take her fate of facing terrible things, grind it into sand, and blow it away. Please work with me so I can do that.
You sound quite full of yourself.
Yeah, I'm a man who's full of himself. You didn't know?
When Puck spoke in a low voice, Subaru closed one eye and replied thus. Hearing this, Puck folded his short arms. Then the little cat made a tiny grunt and spoke.
Somehow, you've changed, Subaru, but at the same time you haven't.
That's 'cause human nature ain't an easy thing to change.
I suppose not. Methods aside, it seems you still treasure Leah in your thoughts.
A moment after he spoke the words, the ferocious pressure that had dominated the entire area to that point abated. Freed from the sense of menace, which had made him feel like his entire body was being frozen, Subaru sighed at length. The same went for the expeditionary force, Julius and Wilhelm included. In particular, Ferris exaggeratedly patted his own chest.
We're all right now. No one's killing us all of a sudden, meow.
Relax. We're brothers and kitty ears, yes? Do I look like that mean and scary a spirit to you?
Puck responded lightheartedly to Ferris's gloomy words, visibly puffing his cheeks up. His demeanor until a moment before had seemed like a bad joke, but one way or another, the spirit's anger seemed to have been assuaged.
Well, I wasn't that angry in the first place. I've been quietly eavesdropping on the villagers for a while now, you see.
So that's where you've been. Then you knew what I was trying to do all along?
It makes a nice story. Enough that it almost softened me up before I realized it.
Don't flip this around. Talk seriously, would you? This whole discussion's for Emilia's sake.
Subaru was happy that they were shooting the breeze like normal, but on the other hand, he was eager to gloss over how much it had gotten under his skin. After that, he looked over his shoulder, grimacing Julius's way.
And you should have mentioned you managed to call Puck over. I was shaking in my boots.
I did not surprise you intentionally. I knew the Great Spirit was present at the same time. The buds made their return. I am relieved that your conversation ended peacefully.
Well, I do feel the same way.
Sharing Julius's relief, Subaru slumped his shoulders in exasperation. Calling Puck to the village was one of the tasks Subaru had asked Julius to do to have him send his quasi-spirits to the mansion and bring Puck back without Emilia's being the wiser. This was to gain his cooperation in the skullduggery required to get Emilia to evacuate.
If Ram, the villagers, and Puck are all on the same page,
Leah won't be able to really put her foot down, huh? I really must say, though, you've scrupulously prepared.
Puck made a strained smile at Subaru's attention to detail. But Subaru shook his head at the little cat.
We're facing the witch cult. Nothing's too much where those guys are concerned.
The term made Puck's eyes go slightly distant. It was the reaction of someone who'd encountered them somewhere before. In point of fact, on previous go-arounds, Puck had really hated the cult. Subaru thought that correlation went even beyond their causing harm to Emilia. But
So you want to fool Leah into going with you. But how exactly are you going to do this?
Hey, watch how you say it. Having even you putting it like that gets a guy bent out of shape.
however, before Subaru could inquire about that connection, Puck, back to his normal self, switched the topic. Puck was right to want the details of the plan. Pushing his misgivings down the road and prioritizing the evacuation plan for Emilia and the others was the proper call to make.
You know the plan from all your eavesdropping, don't you? After that, my secret weapon comes into play.
Secret weapon?
Puck cocked his head at the grandiose language. Meanwhile, Subaru revealed his trump card, a white robe packed into his bag. Subaru immediately put the robe on. He wasn't built much bigger than its proper owner, so he had no trouble wearing it.
Plus, that faint whiff of sweet perfume is one hell of a motivator for me.
I wouldn't really call that a secret weapon, but it seems to be a robe with an odd enchantment on it.
Certainly, one robe's not enough for me to cure Emilia's confidence issues.
The proper owner of the white robe was, in fact, Emilia. Incidentally, Subaru said Emilia's because Emilia was an acid burning through his own thoughts. He'd be able to speak with Emilia, touch her, and even savor her lingering aroma. His confidence and emotional stability were both shaky. Either way, the Emilia's part was a joke, but the power of the robe itself was no laughing matter.
This robe's convenient goods, handcrafted by Roswal himself, and apparently has a block identification enchantment embedded in it. It's Emilia's personal property to begin with, but it's not like I stole it, okay?
He thought back as the details of the abominable time when he had obtained the object came rushing back. It was the robe that Emilia had thrown at him when she was arguing with him during their breakup at the royal palace. In the time since, Subaru had always kept the robe stuffed in his bag, never letting it out of his grasp. Now it served a crucial role.
Whatever its origins might be, what do you? Pah! So that is your plan.
Now, I don't have to explain, but that knowing face of yours still annoys me.
One's nature is a troublesome thing. In my opinion, your nature is a rather complex one as well.
The words made Subaru feel like Julius was seeing right through him, causing him to demonstrate his dismay with an exaggerated snort. After that, Subaru shifted his gaze toward Puck.
So there you have it. We'll be putting on a play for Emilia, you'll be acting too, and I'm counting on you to help me explain all this after we settle everything.
I'll put on an act, but make up with her yourself. That, Subaru, is up to you.
Jin!
Subaru groaned in frustration at being refused to the bitter end. He couldn't expect any cooperation from Puck in making up with Emilia. It was something he would have to accomplish on his own power. Then that meant Puck would cooperate with everything else. Namely,
So Puck, on that note, I have one favor to ask you.
What is it?
Isn't it obvious? Convincing the hermit back at the mansion.
Subaru winked to Puck as he spoke the words, broaching the final remaining problem.
Did I think I would ever again have a chance to look upon that stupid face? I wonder.
The instant he entered the room, the girl in charge of the archive greeted him with a sharp voice. Hearing the poisonous greeting to which he was accustomed, Subaru spontaneously broke out in a smile. This was a mysterious room, dominated by countless shelves and the books packed into those shelves. This was an archive that existed nowhere in the world, Roswell's archive of forbidden books, protected by its librarian, Beatrice. Through use of teleportation magic known as the Passage, the archive of forbidden books was connected to doors in the mansion at random. That, Subaru knew already, but what truly surprised him this time around was...
I never thought it was connected to doors in the village. You're actually a pretty incredible magic user, aren't you?
If all you wanted to do was talk, you asked Pucky to do a favor for nothing.
Right now, I wanted to get a little foothold before moving on to the main subject. Sheesh. No patience at all.
Subaru, receiving an even harsher response than usual, made a very slightly conflicted face as he cocked his head. In contrast to Subaru, the girl in the elegant dress made a weary sigh that was incongruent with her outward appearance. The girl with creamy hair and vertical rolls had a sullen face as she sat upon a wooden footstool. Beatrice, that was her name. She was the guardian protecting the archive of forbidden books, though Subaru's image of her as part of his busy mansion life was far stronger. Hence, she too was someone related to Subaru whom it would be unthinkable to leave behind in the mansion. This was the situation engendered by Puck connecting the archive to a door in the village. More accurately, it was the result of Puck calling and Beatrice employing the passage to make the connection. At the very least, it gave them a chance to talk. Relieved at that fact, Subaru began to broach the subject.
How much do you know about what's going on outside? I mean, have you heard?
Have I heard anything from anyone, I wonder? I am not in the habit of casually conversing with the people of the mansion to begin with, but perhaps I understand the gist of it regardless.
The gist being,
The witch cult! The witch cult!
Unlike Subaru, carefully choosing his words, Beatrice spoke the term with disgust from the bottom of her heart.
I am aware that those miscreants are lurking in the mansion's vicinity. Perhaps I even know that you and Pucky intend to sneak that blockhead of a girl out of this place?
is that so? Well, if you know that much, it becomes a short conversation. If anything, it's a huge help.
He was surprised by her unexpected grasp of the circumstances, but he warmly welcomed the fact that he didn't need to make a long-winded explanation. In particular, not having to explain the menace the witch cult posed made things a very different story. After all, the witch cult was like a natural disaster, a symbol of malice across the entire world.
Anyway, the situation's just as you said. I don't deny I'm sneaking Amelia out either. I got through to Ram and Puck, so that leaves getting you to come with M.
I am not going with you!
Subaru tried to get things in order as quickly as possible, but Beatrice cut him off with a single sentence. Her declaration made Subaru open his eyes wide. Beatrice's eyes slowly narrowed. Then, with eyes lacking any emotion, she continued her words.
Did I say I am not going with you? I wonder. I do not intend to leave this archive of forbidden books, let alone leave the mansion itself. Now that you know this, would you get out already, I wonder?
Wait a minute. What do you say? You're not seeing the situation. Well, I'll explain.
I do not require an explanation. Betty will stay here. Does she have any intention of debating it, I wonder?
Speaking bluntly, Beatrice let her eyes fall to the book sitting upon her lap. It was the usual sight of her concentrating on an overly large book, making it plain she was serious about not evacuating.
Like I'm gonna back down now. Don't you dare cut off the conversation on your own.
Betty has finished speaking. No matter how much you might arbitrarily continue, Betty's conclusion will not change. Do you have any more time to waste than she does, I wonder?
Gah! If you understand that much, give me a hand and behave while I lead you out.
I refuse. No matter who comes. Yes. No matter who comes, they shall not enter this archive of forbidden books.
Beatrice did not even look Subaru's way as she made the statement. A cold, ghastly aura flowing from her into Subaru. He understood that the feeling creeping up his spine was a side effect of the magical energy pouring out of the girl. Beatrice was a powerful magic user. That power was not limited to the passage alone. Perhaps in truth, she hid such might that the witch cult could not defeat her. Her present poise suggested as much.
Even so, I'm bringing you with me anyway.
You are still going on about...
It's not a question of whether you're strong or not. You're a girl, and little, and that's reason enough. I don't need any other reason not to leave you behind where you'll be in danger, damn it.
Cowed by the feeling of oppression, Subaru shouted and marched across the floor of the archive even so. The sight of him advancing and the content of his words made Beatrice's eyes fly wide. Then the girl closed her eyes, her face looking like she was enduring suffering.
Betty will not go with you. Could you please stop attempting to bewitch me? I wonder.
I'm not wrong. You're the one who's wrong. That's my answer. We're done here.
You geese. So obstinate. I hate that about you.
As Beatrice made that frail murmur, Subaru walked over, taking her slender arm in his hand. It was the slender arm of a little girl, no matter how powerful a magic user she might be. He didn't want to leave her there alone. It wasn't right. Without a word, he pulled on Beatrice's arm, leading her down from the footstool. If he led her through the door of the archive of forbidden books and back to the village, even Beatrice couldn't complain then.
Because no matter how important this place is, it's not worth as much as your life.
With the door right before their eyes, Beatrice's feet suddenly came to a stop. Subaru, suspicious of her reaction, looked back, only for his breath to catch at the terrified look on her face. Beatrice looked between the door of the archive of forbidden books and Subaru, back and forth, and finally spoke.
Yeah, truly do this, I wonder.
What do you mean? Can you?
Yeah, I have a pact. Betty is the guardian of this room, this archive of forbidden books, and will surrender it to no one.
Talking about packs again, I'm sick of hearing about them. You stick to packs too darn much. You've got to think outside the box.
Can a human like you comprehend the weight of this pact? I wonder just how important pacts are to Betty, to Pucky.
What's this human that? Hey, Beatrice, wait!
With a face ready to break into tears, Beatrice shook her arm loose from Subaru, turning her empty left hand toward him. The gesture was the one she used when driving the pesky Subaru out of the room. Always, she unleashed her magical power the next moment. But this time, for a moment, she hesitated. Thus, during that time, Subaru grasped Beatrice's arm once again.
I've got why.
That instant, their eyes met, and when Subaru beheld the fear and despair so powerfully displayed by her eyes, the sleeve of her arm slipped through his fingers. A second later, he was enveloped by a shockwave that knocked his feet clear off the archive of forbidden books floor.
Bear?
Farewell. Farewell.
His vision contorted before he even had a chance to call her name. The spatial distortion swallowed up his flesh, sending him beyond the door that ought not to exist as she forcibly severed the link to the archive of forbidden books. He raised his voice, but it did not reach her. His vision was covered in light, rendering him unable to see. Not the door to the archive of forbidden books, not Beatrice's crying face, nothing. Re-Zero, Starting Life in Another World by Teppei Nagatsuki, casted six-tale novel. Please subscribe to our channel. She watched as the door shut before her eyes and the sight of the youth vanished from her vision. Then the girl hugged herself with her quivering arms, haltingly murmuring to herself,
Mother. Nah. Mother.
That was all Beatrice said in her tiny, tearful voice. Her eyes were dry. Her tears had already vanished. Even so, her expression remained one of grief as she spoke.
How much longer? How much longer? Must Betty...
Carried by mournful steps, Beatrice collapsed upon the footstool at the center of the room. Then her arms stretched far to one side of the stool, seizing hold of the book resting upon it, clutching it in her arms.
Mother. 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 Mother.
Like a lost little girl trying to cling to her mother, Beatrice continued to clutch the thick book in her arms, calling out over and over in a sobbing, tearful voice. But the black-bound book she clutched in her arms would not give her an answer. His vision contorted, and a shockwave came. The feeling of his back hitting something hard made his breath catch.
Ha!
With a short snort, he softened the coming impact. He was now on his back, limbs spread wide, and Subaru's vision was filled by the blue sky. He could feel the ground through his back. Abruptly, something blocked the blue sky in his vision.
Though you have surprised me from time to time, this has to be the most extraordinary experience among them.
Is that so? I think your fancy pants comments annoy me more as time goes on, too.
Subaru bounced the comment back at Julius, appearing upside down from his point of view, with an extra helping of invective.
The place was a corner of Earlham Village, a moment after he'd been shot out of the archive of forbidden books. Apparently, Beatrice had rejected him and teleported him via the passage, returning him to the village. Understanding that fact, Subaru got up with a great swing of his legs. Then he turned his head around and spoke.
Damn that thick-headed lowly. I'm the obstinate one. If you're gonna make a face like that, why can't you just come with me? Shit. If it's gonna be like this, I'll drag her out if I have. I'll drag her out if I have.
It might be best to quit while you're ahead.
Subaru couldn't pull his mind away from the sad face he'd seen on Beatrice when they'd separated. However, it was Puck, leisurely appearing behind Julius, who poured cold water on his enthusiasm. The little cat's spirit touched his own whiskers, looking at Subaru, covered in dirt and fallen leaves as he spoke.
Covered in grime, huh? Looks like Betty was pretty rough when she threw you out.
I hate to say this, but I was literally one step away. But I suppose I have to say that went pretty much as I expected. It really would be best if you...
I can't persuade Betty. Didn't I mention I have a pact?
Lately, that's taken the #1 spot on my list of words I don't want to hear.
Puck's face showed no ill will, but Subaru grandly scowled toward him as he replied. A pact made Beatrice stay behind, a pact prevented Puck from persuading her, and a pact had been the impetus for his breakup with Amelia. Pact, pact, pact.
If you talk, Beatrice will listen. Even though you know that, it's a no-can-do.
I can't. Besides, even if I say it, Betty still won't listen. I told you the first time she sent you out of the archive of forbidden books, didn't I? I cannot save Betty.
Puck turned his eyes down slightly as he replied. Subaru closed his mouth, unable to say a word, staying behind in the archive to persuade Beatrice. At first, Subaru had meant to entrust that task to Puck. Considering the daily interaction between Girl and Kitty, he was sure Puck was the right cat for the job. But when he unveiled the idea, Puck would not acquiesce, sending Subaru in his place. And sure enough, Subaru had failed to persuade her, and yet Puck looked at Subaru and continued.
Subaru, it is likely that if you can't do it, no one can. This is Betty's answer.
I really don't get what you're trying to tell me.
Subaru couldn't read the emotions hovering in those round eyes whatsoever. The little cat's spirit still wouldn't reveal his emotions as his tiny shoulders slumped.
Well, leaving Betty in the archive of forbidden books isn't exactly a bad plan, anyway. I don't think anyone would breach the passage without Betty knowing it, and she has ways of defending herself if she's inside the mansion. Trust me, it's all right.
So wanting to bring her out of there anyway is just me being selfish then?
A selfish thing is something a real man can say and hope to make a reality. How about it, Subaru? Do you think of yourself as a real man?
Great spirit. Julius, watching Subaru's cheeks go stiff in the face of Puck's merciless words, interjected with words of his own. When the knight called out to him, Puck curled his long tail around himself and spoke.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be mean. I know you want to save Betty, and I am truly grateful for that.
The Great Spirit's words are strict, but they bear the ring of truth. What now, then?
As Puck apologetically averted his eyes, Subaru knitted his brows at Julius's words.
What Dia mean what now?
The traveling merchants, being led by Rajan, should rendezvous with us here at the village any time now. If your assumptions are correct, the witch cult's spy is hidden among them. There is likely no more time available for you to use.
The plan was to feed the witch cult fake intel and buy time for Amelia and Co. to safely evacuate. Having a spy from the cult in their group was a situation where any misstep would be fatal. He felt regret about Beatrice, but he'd lost the time needed to bring that girl with him.
Mark my words, Biko. If you'd just come out like a good girl...
You should save regrets for later. I was opposed to your allowing time to slip even when it would not affect the results. However, in my judgment, this is the dividing line.
When Julius pointed that out, Subaru bit his tongue, clutched his head, and stamped his foot. After that, he wrung out an argaw, turning toward the wide-eyed Julius and Puck as he spoke.
Let's switch to putting that plan in motion. We'll group up with the merchants and evacuate the villagers. We'll talk to Amelia just as we planned. Puck, I'm counting on you too.
You are sure about this?
It ain't good. It ain't good. One little bit, but there's nothing better we can do.
As he gritted his teeth in remorse, Subaru's thoughts shifted toward the mansion within which Beatrice remained that very moment. She was a hard-headed, know-nothing, I'll-do-it-my-way girl, and a girl who had once saved Subaru's heart.
We'll make sure Amelia and the others escape, but we're not letting the witch cult lay one finger on that mansion. We're completely shutting them down, and then that lowly can complain while I drag her out by her curls.
That's what the new Subaru would do. Save everyone and take his revenge on Beatrice. So Subaru swore in his heart, brushing all hesitation aside as he looked up at Puck.
Puck! Amelia hasn't noticed anything outside for the last close to an hour.
It's all right. She's been sound. Well, she's been asleep. I was worried about her mental fatigue, so I drained a few handfuls of mana out of her and put her to sleep. I mean, if I put Subaru on ice upon his return, it'd be cruel to let Leah see that and go into shock, right?
Can you stop saying stuff to make my heart skip a beat all of a sudden?
Unable to tell whether Puck was joking or not, Subaru let it slide and looked back at Julius. The look of determination on Subaru's face made the handsome young man tighten his own refined visage as well.
Ferris, Master Wilhelm, and the villagers are all mentally prepared. They merely await your signal to begin. Of course, the same goes for me.
With a strong nod, Subaru shifted his eyes to the center of the village. There, he saw the villagers beginning preparations to evacuate according to the plan explained to them by Ram and the expeditionary force assisting in those efforts. Standing at the edge of that scene were Ferris, Wilhelm, and Ram, each awaiting Subaru, each with their own role to fulfill. They were who he would bring to the mansion, pulling the wool over Amelia's eyes.
I won't be able to tell her this was all for her sake. This is totally my own selfishness talking.
I told you, didn't I? If you turn selfishness into reality, it's not selfishness. It's hope.
When Subaru murmured, Puck sat on his shoulder and spoke thusly. The little cat thrust his paw against Subaru's forehead. Subaru's laughed a little at the nostalgic sensation. With many hardships and the operation to deceive a lovely girl lying ahead, he thought himself pretty laid back as he spoke.
Well, let's get this started, shall we? The evil tricks to turn that hope into reality.
And so, in high spirits, they sent Amelia away, whereupon they began setting the stage to greet the witch cult. Chapter 3, The Self-Declared Knight and the Finest of Knights. May the grace of the spirits be with you. Climbing aboard the dragon carriage for evacuation, those were the words of prayer Amelia left the expeditionary force upon her departure from Earlham Village. To Subaru, that grace was as powerful as any blessing. With only the best intentions, Amelia was deceived via an exaggerated performance for her own sake and sent away from Earlham Village along with the villagers themselves. Time continued onward. It was also after Subaru had made full use of Return by Death to capture Ketty, the finger from the witch cult lurking among the traveling merchants. Subaru watched the horde of dragon carriages run off as his eyes shifted to the formation of knights accompanying them. 10 knights had been selected from among the expeditionary force to escort the evacuating carriages. The chance the witch cult would detect the evacuation was low, but they'd sent a detachment just in case. The dragon carriages had 2 destinations, the royal capital and the sanctuary. Subaru knew nothing about the latter except the name, but the fact that Ram had given it her stamp of approval was proof enough it was safe. Their safety was no doubt far more assured than that of Subaru and the others facing the decisive battle with the witch cult. After all, the greatest combat power in the expeditionary force was escorting Amelia and the others.
Sir Subaru, I pray for your fortune in battle.
Take care of yourself, Wilhelm.
Subaru said after Wilhelm brought up the rear of the detachment from atop his land dragon. Facing the battle to come without Wilhelm was akin to rolling the dice. However, where the impending decisive battle with Betelgeuse was concerned, the Sword Devil's presence was not an indispensable element for defeating the madman. For that reason, fully aware it was a reckless request, Subaru had insisted on entrusting the defense of Amelia and the other evacuees to Wilhelm, to which he had readily agreed.
Well, Petra and the others did jump at the chance to take care of Amelia.
The children had merrily accepted Amelia aboard their carriage, just as Subaru had asked. The children had led Amelia by the hand, making her relieved that they had not rejected her. Remembering that scene, deep feelings of warmth arose in Subaru's chest, and at the same time, pangs of guilt.
Using happy feelings to fool Amelia into going along with the situation and escaping, I've become quite a villain, playing with people's hearts like that. That stuff about me not reading atmospheres or human hearts seems like a lie now.
Grimacing in self-derision, Subaru vigorously scratched his own head. It was too easy to dismiss his deceiving her as his hoping for Amelia's safety. Even so, the fact was, it had put her mind at ease. Besides, asking her to ride with the children had been a calculation by itself.
Even if the lie is exposed, as long as someone holds Amelia back, the gentle Amelia probably couldn't shake off the hands of people concerned for her from the bottom of their hearts. Hence, Subaru had intentionally created a situation where the children would bond with Amelia. She'll look down on me if that part ever comes out, so I'll keep that a secret for life.
Puck, too, had agreed that it was better that way. The spirit, his fellow actor cooperating with the performance, or rather co-conspirator, would not be leaving Amelia's side. Amelia's security was guaranteed like never before. At least, he wanted to believe that.
Looks like the village types and the half-demon girl left already. Looks like you did pretty good, huh?
As Subaru collected his thoughts, he heard hearty Kuraragi dialect tossed his way from behind. When he looked back, he saw Ricardo coming over, carrying his great hatchet with him. Subaru glared at the dogman's dog face and spoke.
Stop calling my pretty Amelia a half-demon, you half-mutt.
Oh, getting called a half-mutt is surprisingly humiliating. I'll have to remember that one.
He let loose a hearty, sarcastic laugh, and his forbearance drained the bitterness out of Subaru's strained smile. However, Subaru's cheeks soon tensed anew as he walked beside Ricardo and turned toward the forest.
So how'd it go? Got the job done like I asked?
Hey, we split up to hit them by surprise in places they never expected to be attacked, right? If I screwed that up, I'd quit my post. Every last part went great. We kicked their asses all over the map.
Ricardo amiably showed him the blood still stuck to his great hatchet, patting the map on his hip with his palm.
Meaning we were right, the places marked on that map were where their hideouts were.
That's what they get for being so methodical with their planning. You did good, bro.
Ricardo bared his fangs. The original owner of the map on his hip was, in fact, Caddy the Witch Cultist. Thanks to his capture according to Subaru's scheme, they gained both his conversation mirror and his map. The map contained a highly detailed layout of the Mathers domain, and 10 places had been marked upon it. The markers were probably for witch cult hideouts, and to find out for sure, Subaru had sent Ricardo and co. to the closest marker on the map. The results had apparently been as expected. As if to prove that information correct, members of the Iron Fangs leaped out of the forest on their ligers, merrily galloping around the village square, and by all appearances unscathed.
Yahoo! We slaughtered 'em all. Sister, do not say such foul-sounding things. We took proper captives.
The smiling banter between the siblings, smelling of blood, made Subaru pat his chest in relief. He was happy about victory, but also that no one had been lost in the process. No matter how high the odds of victory, the ones sending people off to battle always had reason to be concerned. Likely those reasons had been greatly minimized because of that map.
And besides that, luck's really fallen your way, bro.
What I mean by?
The hideout you picked me to hit had this laying around.
As Subaru cocked his head, Ricardo took something out of the cloth tied around his waist and tossed it Subaru's way. Subaru immediately caught it, and his eyes went wide at the light sensation in his palm. This was a mirror, indeed, the spitting image of one he had seen very recently.
A conversation mirror, and this has to be on the other end of the one Katie had.
According to our info, the witch cultist we captured was communicating by mirror. Now that we got this from the ones I just mopped up, they won't be telling the other witch cultists nothing. Real convenient, busting up their communication network like that. You couldn't ask for a more promising start.
When Subaru's eyes popped wide at results beyond his wildest hopes, Ricardo opened his maw in a great laugh. If his deduction was fact, they certainly had gained even more of an advantage over the witch cult. But after the feeling of everything going well had been followed by his tasting heaps of bitterness the last time around.
Hey, bro, you don't look very happy.
No one escaped the hideout you smashed. If even one escaped, it's all for nothing.
What do you think this sharp nose o' mime is for? Of course not. Just
Ricardo strongly thumped his chest, but suddenly he awkwardly lowered the tone of his voice.
I'm sure no one got away, but it's kind of a problem if there are other mirrors.
I knew it. What? What was it? Some kind of fatal flaw. There's an issue that's gonna knock out the entire foundation of the operation, isn't there? Shit! I knew things were going too well.
Hey, what's with the fantasies of damage? Ya can't be a general and be a worrywart like that. Besides, there's no guarantee something bad happened, so stop assuming.
As a pale Subaru clung to him, Ricardo retorted with an overly intimidating face. Then the dogman wrapped an arm around Subaru's head, choosing his words to rectify the latter's stubborn paranoia.
Look here, see? It's not like anything bad's happened. Just we can't celebrate till the witch cult's smashed flat. Seeing's faster than talking anyway. Hey, bring in that guy from earlier.
As Subaru grimaced, his head still in Ricardo's grasp, Ricardo indicated for his men to bring something over. When Subaru saw what they carried, his expression shifted, first to worry, then to disbelief. Atop a ligger, a single human being was being carried in, his entire body bound by rope. When the person noticed Subaru and Ricardo, he wrung out a muffled wail. Perhaps it was an objection to the impropriety of his treatment, or perhaps a plea to spare his life.
We found I'm in the middle of the witch cult roost. I think he just got captured by him out of bad luck. But, hey, what's with you?
In the middle of his explanation, Ricardo found it odd that Subaru's eyes were nailed to the wrapped-up person. But this was surely the natural reaction for him to have. After all, the bound man wriggling around there was none other than... Unable to contain himself, Subaru let out a small sound. He pointed to the young man bound hand, foot, and even torso, and burst out laughing.
So you got yourself captured. I thought I was never gonna see your face here, Otto.
And so Subaru called out the last name in the dramatis personae X as misfortune, having thus far denied him the stage. After letting quite a few laughs fly at his expense, Subaru freed Otto from his bonds.
Though I am not particularly inclined to simply say, thank you very much for aiding me. Hey, is that how you talk to the group that saved your life? You wouldn't want nasty rumors to spread, would you? What kind of base villain are you? What a person! Oh, fine, thank you very much! Thanks to you, my life has been spared. Not that living brings any great comfort, damn it all!
Half in desperation, Otto spoke his thanks to Subaru, who was bullying him with full knowledge of his precarious circumstances. Otto had been discovered when Ricardo and co. raided a witch cult stronghold. Apparently, he'd been affixed to a cross in a cave in the mountains, and he had been rescued on the verge of becoming a human sacrifice.
Well, we can't rule out the possibility he's a witch cultist, so we should bring him back tied for now.
We are treasuring him, almost like, let's keep him around just in case. It's nice to have a human sacrifice on hand when you need one. What kind of appraisal is that for someone you just met? I haven't done anything to you, you know?
Red-faced and bound, Otto moved his limbs around and wailed at Subaru's overly harsh words.
Well, setting that aside, so how did you wind up captured? If there's something behind it, go ahead and tell us. That is, something I truly do not wish to divulge for reasons of personal convenience. If you don't want to say it, that's fine. Incidentally, changing the subject, most of the traveling merchants gathered in this domain right now are heading toward the mansion of Marquis Mathers to make a little money. That's not changing the subject, though. I heard that, so I know already, you know? That's right. I am the fool who leaped at the fortuitous talk of profit, first in line, charging down this treacherous road and captured to his own ill fortune. Go ahead, laugh. That's so. Glad you're all right, then. You're making me break into tears. What is with those hollow tears? Is not grasping at a fishy story explanation enough for you?
Subaru pitied Otto and his wistful, energetic confession, warmly taking in the sight of him, lamenting the inhumanity of it all. Apparently, his merchant nature had spurred him into some rather impulsive actions. Subaru was relieved that the impression he'd received from their previous encounters hadn't changed at all. Subaru's mischievous demeanor led Otto to let out a sigh of unbridled dejection.
Goodness, what a person, after I'd properly thanked him for saving my life and everything. What did save your life? You just don't want me to rub it in. You owe me one. To be frank, I feel like this one is a particularly large debt, so one I feel little desire to acknowledge.
Otto's face scowled grandly when Subaru raised his index finger and declared him to be indebted. Afterwards, Subaru smiled as Otto kept repeating, "Debt, debt," as he took it in with a look most sour. Yet at the same time, his actions established to Subaru that there was nothing suspicious about him, relieving him of the need for extra prudence. It went the same for Ricardo, on guard as he watched the two conversing from the side. The mere fact that he'd been brought from an enemy stronghold made Otto's position delicate to the extreme. Considering that Ketty, positioned as leader of the traveling merchants, was a spy, Subaru couldn't help but give Otto, who had gotten along well with Ketty during previous go-arounds, the strictest of scrutiny. After all, carelessly trusting him only to be betrayed would render Subaru's efforts to date all for naught.
Man, I've turned into a pretty disagreeable guy. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm glad you're all right. Hey, Mimi, that's great, huh?
Okay, I'm happy and super thrilled you're all right, Mr. Halfballing. My eyes out.
When Subaru bounced the conversation Mimi's way, she divulged the circumstances of Otto's rescue. After Mimi voiced that truth, she cocked her head and said, "Isn't that right?" as Otto collapsed then and there.
It's no wonder you half-balled your eyes out. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. This is between you, me, Mimi, Ricardo, and after that, the Iron Fangs and everyone in the expeditionary force. Does that not make it an open secret? Does that not make it an open secret? Anyway, there's no worry about the witch cult attacking this village, so you can cool your heels here. Also, my condolences over half-balling your eyes out, and my condolences about the money-making talk too. Your condolences? Surely you cannot mean?
Otto looked around the village in shock, looking like his world had come to an end.
Do not tell me that everyone has already been. The fact that you're alive after being captured by the witch cult means you've been blessed by heaven, No, the fact that you got captured to begin with means heaven has abandoned you. Well, live strong. If you are going to console me, won't you look after me till the bitter end?
With Otto breaking into tears, Subaru gave him a pat on the shoulder and looked at Ricardo. As he did so, the dog man wrinkled his snout and tilted his head up. Apparently, even his veteran mercenary's eyes judged Otto to be an utterly harmless object of pity. Subaru thought of that as the silver lining in the cloud.
So from here on, this'll be the front line against the witch cult. We've got a lot to do, but I can't think of anything you can do to help with that. Maybe you could sort out the list of the freight the other traveling merchants left behind? Will pay me a fee for that. Man, even I'm surprised. You're even more desperate than I thought. Yeah, I'll pay. Someone here tag along with Otto?
With suspicions about him lifted, Subaru gave Otto a job to do and moved that concern to the back of the line for the moment. Instead, Subaru headed to the expeditionary force, just finished reorganizing its ranks, with Julius at its head.
You reunited with a familiar face, yes? Is that really enough warmth toward an old acquaintance?
Julius, noticing Subaru's approach, turned toward him before he could say anything. Subaru grimaced at his words, pointing over his shoulder toward Otto, now standing facing the pile of freight.
Behind the stupid laughs and the stupid conversation, I was suspecting he was up to something the whole time. My personality's gotten so rotten, I'm starting to hate myself.
Thanks to that rotten personality, we have come this far unscathed. I believe you should take pride in that rotten personality, though perhaps you should not express it in those exact terms.
Your personality is pretty rotten too. I guarantee it.
Yes. Have you two rotten personalities finished speaking yet?
The exchange between Subaru and Julius made Ferris cock his little head and smile mischievously. In a vengeful mood, Subaru grandly curled his lips and spoke.
What is it? Rotten personality, kitty ears.
What a way to speak to me. Meow. And Fairy tries his hottest for everyone's sake. Meow.
And your earnest efforts have always been of great aid. So what have you learned?
I've managed to learn a few things about the fingers from the captured witch cultists.
When Julius prompted, Ferris's smile vanished as he pointed to a cabin they'd commandeered. Ferris must have been directly checking inside the body of Ketty, the captured witch cultist held within. During the previous go-around, Ferris had suffered repeated anguish from being unable to stop the witch cultists from committing suicide. For that reason, Subaru had been somewhat anxious about the examination of Ketty's body, but
First, the cultists seem to have a magic stone embedded into them that turns into powerful poison for suicide purposes. But the fingers seem to get special treatment. Instead of poison, there's an explosion ritual embedded into them so that when they kill themselves, they take everyone nearby with them.
Sounds like it's not so much meant for stopping information from leaking out as for the Archbishop's possession, huh? If he needs to die so he can body swap, it's a given he'd counter being knocked out and tied up by killing himself.
For suicide, but surely it is likely a method of external activation exists. What about that case?
I was worried about that too, so I nullified the ritual and ripped the whole thing out.
Ferris had a simple answer to Julius's concern, but judging from Julius's wide-eyed reaction, that had been no easy feat. Ferris continued.
Also, about the characteristics of the fingers that Subaru was so concerned about, it's not so much stagnant gaits as having weird clumps of mana. I think the presence or absence of this sets the fingers apart from the regular cultists, and that the Archbishop of the Seven Deadly Sins can only transfer into the ones with this planted in them.
So the condition for possession is the difference between the general members and the premium members of the club. What happened to that clump of mana?
I melted it and scrambled it all up, so we can't really call him a finger anymore.
You managed all that? That's huge!
Subaru, his voice leaping at Ferris's report, grabbed his slender hand and vigorously shook it up and down. He had nothing but praise for Ferris's skill in checking so much in such a short time.
Meow! Me! Well, it's what you should expect of Fairy. Meow! But it's also thanks to your figuring out that the fingers committed suicide a different way, Subaru.
No, all the credit for this goes to you. You would have had a ton of regrets if it didn't work out.
What the Fairy would never regret anything where people like that are concerned.
Ferris stuck his tongue out and pried his hand loose from Subaru's shake. Subaru made a pained smile at Ferris's teasing demeanor. Ferris would never know it, but Subaru was congratulating him for winning the rematch from the last time around. Besides, thanks to Ferris's valiant efforts, he'd largely managed to piece together a hypothesis.
Besides, if you neutralize the conditions for possession, that prisoner won't die, right?
However, vile his tongue, the gate inside his body has been set straight. We should bring him back to the royal capital and treat him as a precious source of information. He fainted from the pain of pulling the ritual out, and he's still out cold.
Ferris closed one eye and guaranteed that Katie's life was safe, if nothing else. Subaru couldn't conceive of the pain of having the ritual ripped out of him. And then
We finally managed to take a single proper prisoner. There's no need to take more risks. You see what I'm getting at?
What, you think at this point I'm gonna go soft-weighing those guys against the people important to me?
when Ferris's eyes questioned his resolve, Subaru nodded to them without showing even a moment's pause. To bring down the Archbishop of the Seven Deadly Sins of Sloth, the witch cultists had to be wiped out, fingers included. That meant a literal battle of annihilation. And it was none other than Subaru Natsuki who would sound the signal for that battle to begin.
You really have straightened yourself out, Subaru.
As Subaru clenched a fist, Ferris narrowed his eyes, murmuring as he gazed at the side of Subaru's face. The contents of that murmur brought a pained smile over Subaru as he slumped his shoulders.
Hey, now, Don't put it like that. It doesn't sound like much of a compliment.
I'm not complimenting you. You've gone from bad to normal. Don't get carried away with yourself. Meow.
With an adorable face, Ferris laid into Subaru until the bitter end. He'd probably been the person to judge Subaru the most harshly of all since they'd departed the royal capital. That was probably because they both lacked the power to do battle by themselves. Those who can't fight alone are stuck together, for better or worse. While Ferris's appraisal of Subaru's weakness was harsh, it was fair at the same time, and Subaru hated that.
Don't like that, huh? Right now, you've climbed up to normal. Understand?
Normal, huh? Gotcha. But it makes me kinda glad.
People don't want to have their beliefs twisted out of shape, you see. Sabawu, you must not hesitate or go astray. So don't let anything shake your resolve.
Ferris responded to Subaru's light-hearted words with a statement in a firm voice. It thrust deep into Subaru's slightly relaxed chest, driving home just what was the source of his so-called resolve. No, Ferris didn't have to say it. It was something he had to realize and face by himself.
Preparations are completely in order. Subaru, we may begin any time.
Having put the expeditionary force in order, Julius addressed Subaru to create an opportunity for him. It was not just he. Everyone from the ranks of the expeditionary force and the Iron Fangs awaited Subaru's voice as one. Their morale was high before the climactic battle, their spirits beginning to soar above the battlefield centered upon the village square. Subaru felt that fighting spirit as he slightly tipped his head back, looking up at the sky. He couldn't remove all uncertain elements. Even so, he'd sent Emilia and the others off, entrusting them to Wilhelm, and thanks to Ferris, they grasped the true nature of the fingers. Julius was awaiting his signal. He'd done his utmost to put human affairs in order. All he could do now was smile, reel it all in, and await the verdict of heaven.
Let's do this. Everyone start just like we arranged.
He lowered his gaze from the sky, turning it straight toward the members of the expeditionary force, standing before him. At his urging, the warriors mounted their beasts of war without a word, acting in accordance with Subaru's words.
Yeah, thanks, Pat Lash.
The jet-black land dragon had been standing close to Subaru's side the whole time, eagerly awaiting her turn. Subaru stroked her hard hide with his palm before mounting up like the others. Julius's and Ricardo's mounts were to their side, sandwiching Subaru between them. Ferris, left on the ground by himself, nodded to Subaru with a serious look as Subaru took his place in the vanguard. Then he heralded the start of the final battle.
Now, this time we'll settle this. Sloth Sir Fate, I ain't going easy on ya. Subaru had inferred several things about Pateljuice's possession. First, it was the power to shift into the bodies of others, stealing them for himself. Second, Pateljuice's so-called fingers were retainers for him to transfer into, so as a precondition of defeating Pateljuice, all the fingers had to be destroyed. Third, if Pateljuice lost all his fingers, he would transfer to a different body instead. Subaru's body was the leading candidate. The parasite of the mind was so powerful, it was virtually impossible to resist by one's own devices. The end. Now that I'm writing these down, this is like kills you as soon as he sees you level stuff. Plus, he even has unseen hands, so you can't just laugh and say, nah, nothing's that evil.
The Archbishop of the Seven Deadly Sins had two powers. Subaru was confident that if you didn't know them, you could challenge him 100 times and be killed every time. In the course of repeating while keeping his memory, searching over and over for a plan to beat him, Subaru finally saw with clarity the fearsomeness of his foe. Small wonder the witch cult had had such influence on the world over the course of 4 centuries. Such was the scale of Patelgeuse Romane Conti, the madman specializing in killing at first sight.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
The best thing for taking on a kill-at-first-sight enemy was someone for whom it wasn't first sight. Thus, it was Subaru Netsuki, he who had returned by death, who was Patelgeuse Romane Conti's mortal foe. Once again, Subaru cut through the gloomy forest of overgrown trees as his feet carried him to the wall of rock. Green covered the landscape at every turn, a world where even directional sense seemed suspect. However, Subaru's steps were certain. His senses, his feet, the experiences carved into his memory. All these things guided Subaru forward.
Let's get this show on the road.
Smiling bitterly at the quickening of his heartbeats, Subaru murmured thus as he gave his chest 2 light slaps. Then he headed forward. The place had come into view. Until that moment, Subaru had never approached that place with the resolve to fight in his heart. The last time around, he'd been buying time as a decoy. Before that, he'd been drowning in the bloodlust of others and the yearning for suicide. But this time was different. At minimum, this time was different from the others. Subaru had come to that place with the resolve to fight hardened in his heart, all so he could bring a long, long string of karma. A battle repeated over and over to a final end.
It is good that you have come, disciple of love.
Subaru shuddered with joy when suddenly the forest opened and he was greeted with warm words of welcome. When he slipped out of the woods, a sheer cliff spread straight ahead of him, rising high into his field of vision. A slender man was standing in front of the rock face with both arms spread wide. His eyes welcomed Subaru with a fiery glow. Was it now 4 times he had been greeted by this sight? No matter who it was, when you saw someone's face repeatedly, you let the person into your heart to a certain extent, but it seemed that was impossible, so far as this man was concerned.
I am the Archbishop of the 7 deadly sins of the witch cult charged with sloth. Her!
The madman stretched out his hand, bloodied from self-inflicted wounds, as his trademark line lit the spark. With his eyes drenched in madness, the man arched back, stuck out his tongue, snapping his eyes wide as he said,
Betelgeuse Romani Conti.
With a flutter of his black habit, the madman loudly proclaimed his name with a clap of his bloody hands. Betelgeuse proceeded to stamp the ground, breaking into a happy little dance as he laughed with delight.
It is a fine day, a splendid day. To think that this day, the day of the trial, I would be greeting a new adherent of love. I am moved, greatly moved, moved to tears. My chest is on the verge of bursting.
The madman let spittle fly as he embraced his own body of skin and bones. Subaru harbored disgust for his eccentricities, but he was accustomed enough to smooth over his facial expressions in the man's presence. On top of that, Subaru executed the operation just as agreed upon beforehand, namely,
Lord Archbishop of the 7 deadly sins, it is a pleasure to meet you for the first time.
These words spoken, Subaru rushed over and knelt at the madman's feet. He touched his left hand to his chest, raising his right aloft as he bowed his head with utmost respect and spoke.
I am truly embarrassed to have made it to you on the very eve of this trial. Lord Archbishop, by all means, please use this body, this soul, to fill any vacancy among the faithful and add me to your fingers with all haste.
Thus, with an excess of bombast, did Subaru speak bald-faced lies. He proclaimed his prepared lines with a high-pitched voice, infused his face with maximum reverence that went only skin deep, and silently awaited the madman's reaction. Betelgeuse made no response to Subaru's earnest plea. He said nothing. He did not move. The disquieting silence made Subaru swallow his saliva as he increased his caution and alertness concerning Betelgeuse's next move. The silence continued for about 10 more seconds before it was abruptly broken by,
Oh! Ho! Such fervent zeal from the very first meeting!
Betelgeuse gazed up, extending both hands to the heavens. His voice and his entire body were shaking. He had been moved to tears.
What a disciple love has called! In all my time cursed as sloth, I cannot recall one with such clear eyes! You, a pious adherent of love! How unworthy I must be to have overlooked you all this time! I ask you to forgive my slothfulness!
Betelgeuse cast his limbs aside as he practically leaped onto the ground in front of the fragile-hearted Subaru. Without hesitation, the madman prostrated himself on the rocky ground, banging his head against the surface several times. The merciless self-punishment made his forehead bleed. But he had such a great tendency to inflict self-harm that he probably did this much every day before breakfast. Now that Subaru knew it was someone else's body, the disgust he felt when seeing Betelgeuse act that way was stronger than ever before. Either way, it would not do for him to self-punish to the point of dying. Behind the scenes, the operation was quietly proceeding. Messing up by letting Betelgeuse switch bodies would waste everything.
Please stop, Lord Archbishop. Such actions bring no joy to the witch cult.
Ah, but, my very own sloth, my sin, the ugly fat one such as I have not repaid her love. I possess no other way to repent.
That is not so. The witch cult would rather its cherished followers repay her favor than see them hurt themselves. It is the will to carry out the trial that will surely bring it joy.
Betelgeuse was continuing to thrust his head against the ground when Subaru used rambling speech to stop him. But suddenly the words brought Betelgeuse to a halt. He stared at Subaru, eyes wide open. With those parched eyes upon him, Subaru strongly nodded. Not that it meant anything too special to Subaru. When he did so, Betelgeuse's obsession seemed to fall away. A single tear trickled down his face as he spoke.
Yes, it is just as you say.
He said it in an uncharacteristically gentle way. The next moment, Subaru found Betelgeuse strongly embracing him. Subaru's throat caught as powerful, instinctive repugnance hit him, but the madman paid his reaction no heed. Betelgeuse grandly wept, wiping away neither his flowing tears nor the blood on his forehead.
Oh, I am wrong. I am deeply mistaken. Yes, the trial. What I require is not to punish, judge, or slay myself, but the trial. What terrible slothfulness, forgetting that while wallowing in the joy of my own wounds. I thank you. I thank you.
When Subaru turned in Betelgeuse's arms, he faced upward as Betelgeuse showered him with one-sided gratitude. Betelgeuse wiped the blood off his brow and thrust his right hand's fingers into his mouth. The same mouth that bespoke the foolishness of self-injury, crushing the thumb, index, and middle fingers one by one.
I am worthless if I am slothful. Diligence is the most valuable thing in this world, and in this world, sloth is the worst vice that I must abhor. Ah! 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 Ah!
He was in a precarious, incoherent state in which word and deed were no longer aligned. He reflected upon self-harm as he crushed his own fingers, only to lament his rash actions the next moment. Subaru, feeling the need to bring his mad, nigh unbearable nature to a quick end, put his hand in his pocket. However, his palm was not greeted by the hoped-for reaction. More time was needed for the operation to proceed.
Lord Archbishop, may I speak to you about the trial?
Fearful of an ugly silence taking hold, Subaru took a deep breath, concealed his inner thoughts, and spoke those words. The last time around, he had failed to get anything out of Betelgeuse regarding the trial, so he was still in the dark about the particulars. A trial meant a test of some sort. The witch cult was subjecting Amelia to some kind of test in accordance with its dogma. If fate bound Amelia to the witch cult going forward, he wanted to dig up something.
Lord Archbishop, now that I have joined you, I would truly like to ask you about the trial.
The trial?
When the words haltingly trickled from Betelgeuse, his expression suddenly lost all emotion. Perhaps his mania from before had vanished into thin air. As the madman gazed at Subaru with hollow eyes, he put the remaining fingers, the ring finger and the little finger, of his already bloody right hand into his mouth, crushing them with his teeth. And then,
yes, the trial! The trial! The trial! We must carry out the trial and test her! We cannot fail to test this half-demon and learn if she is a suitable vessel for the descent of the witch!
Subaru was bathed in a strange shrill voice and stinky breath as Betelgeuse broke into a little dance. Subaru grimaced in shock and disgust as the madman's declaration sank in.
A vessel for the witch's descent?
If she passes, embrace her! If she fails, eliminate her! We must test the half-demon's capacity to accept life, whether she is suitable for the witch, whether the witch's love can be sealed within. And the trial is how we determine this.
The madman responded to Subaru's doubt-instilled voice with his own mad voice, raising his hands above his head in the process. The words struck Subaru like a revelation. He was horrified by the comprehension he had gained. Vessel, witch, descend. If he could take the meanings of those words at face value, then...
If the trial determines she's a suitable vessel for the witch will descend into her body.
Someday that fateful day shall arrive when the witch is resurrected into this world. We exist to bear witness to that moment. And for this purpose I and my fingers shall exhaust all efforts. This is my love.
Patelgeuse was moved to tears, for in his world it was the most blessed occasion conceivable. The sight of the madman before him made Subaru sick to his stomach. Based on all the acts of savagery Patelgeuse had engaged in, all the slaughter he had perpetrated, and his pushing Subaru's heart to the breaking point had been because...
You people don't see any value in Amelia herself, do you?
To them, Amelia was nothing more than a box into which they could stuff the soul of the witch. They were after a container. Their great objective, the revival of the witch, loomed large before them. The girl's aspirations, how gentle her heart was, how hard-working she was, these things simply didn't matter. This was at once bottomless contempt for Amelia as an individual girl, and to Subaru, whose heart was greatly swayed by her existence, a humiliation difficult to endure.
Monster!
Patelgeuse did not notice that for a single moment, a single word, Subaru let his true feelings slip. He did not think of burning a village to the ground as excessive in the slightest if it was for the sake of his villainous goals. He could casually dismiss the life story of each and every person he laid hands upon, brushing their dreams and futures aside. That was why Patelgeuse and the witch cult were Subaru Natsuki's enemies.
Lord Archbishop, I have humbly heard your esteemed views. Hearing the ideals of the witch cult and your determination to win, I am truly deeply impressed. Let's make certain this trial succeeds.
Oh, you are indeed splendid. Yes, we shall become as one and wholeheartedly hurl ourselves toward my long-cherished desire. Since the day I accepted her favor, my entire being, my entire spirit became rubbish devoted solely to repaying her love. Ah, Satella, I belong to you.
Patelgeuse approved of Subaru's superficial praise, accepting it with great delight rather than doubt.
It is you, an ideal disciple who should truly be exalted. With the favor so rich within you, should you intend to join the fingers, I shall bestow the factor upon you without delay.
Then by all means, please make me one of your fingers.
I am truly delighted by your unexpected offer, but, the numbers of my fingers have already been filled. There must be something more suitable for the likes of you. Yes, that is IT.
Patelgeuse was counting on his bloodied fingers when he put a hand into his habit like he'd just remembered something. What he took out of his pocket was a single black book, his gospel. The madman lovingly touched its cover. His breath went ragged as his eyes perused its contents.
The words recorded in the gospel, its entire tale of love, is what guides my future. Accordingly, all that I am, all that I ever shall be, is recorded within.
Froth came into the corners of Patelgeuse's mouth as he browsed the pages with a laugh. Subaru, who had once stolen that gospel from him, knew that the strange contents of the black book were indecipherable. But to its owner, Patelgeuse, the characters constituted a legible tale, and his actions were in accordance with its passages. If that was true, Subaru's real enemy was whoever had written that gospel's passages to begin with.
Present thy gospel.
Patelgeuse, audibly closing his gospel, spoke that single phrase. The madman cocked his neck at a 90-degree angle, twisted his hips to the same extent, and stared at Subaru with a neutral expression. These were the words Subaru feared most. According to previous experience, even if a conversation had gone well up to that point, that question served to sever the flow. If someone was a witch cultist, they had a gospel. No exceptions. The black books, their origin and method of creation unknown. served as proof of identity among members of the witch cult. Accordingly, Betelgeuse was asking Subaru to show his ID. Whatever answer he might come up with would greatly influence the course of circumstances. But
What is the matter?
in contrast to the silent Subaru, Betelgeuse left his head bent at that angle, his long tongue drooping out. All he had to do was show off his gospel. A disturbing air began to waft around Betelgeuse as Subaru failed to prove himself even to that extent. Amid that bone-chilling aura, Subaru slowly put his hand into his pocket. Then he thrust what he had taken out before Betelgeuse's eyes. But
What is this?
As you can see, it's Amisha, Lord Archbishop.
Betelgeuse's eyes were wide in surprise, for that which had been thrust before him was a mirror, a conversation mirror, to be specific. There was no doubt that the madman recognized it. After all, it had been in the possession of one of the madman's very own fingers. The fact that Subaru had it was throwing the madman off. But his surprise did not end there. Before his eyes, the surface of the mirror began to faintly glow.
Ah, it's turning on. Wow, your face is scarier than I heard.
The adorable voice they heard over the mirror was very much out of place in the current situation. Subaru couldn't see the mirror's surface, but Betelgeuse was no doubt seeing the speaker, a certain kid-eared knight. It was like playing a really bad joke, but this constituted the signal for the operation.
What have you? No, what have you people done?
Now then, Tora.
Ferris suddenly stated those words to an uncomprehending, angry Betelgeuse. The madman did not know the meaning of the words. Accordingly, Subaru explained them.
It means the surprise raid was a success.
Subaru pointed to the mirror in his hand, laughing at the wide-eyed Betelgeuse. This was not the made-up smiling face from earlier, but the real Subaru, smiling like a little punk.
Wah!
You don't look like you'll understand no matter how many times I say it. Well, don't worry about it.
With Betelgeuse thrown for a loop, Subaru continued his full, beaming smile as he raised a hand above his head. And then,
I can't understand what the hell you're saying either.
What?
Subaru spoke fighting words as he snapped his raised fingertips. Responding to the aggression, Betelgeuse instantly shifted to a combat posture. But the movements of the sprinting figure rushing in from the side proved quicker.
Gah! Ha! Ha!
Raising a shriek, the madman was sent flying head over heels, crashing and rolling over the rocky ground. Watching this, the pitch-black land dragon neighed, as if to spurn the madman for having made her wait for so long. The dragon judged the unproductive conversation to be at an end. Her roar echoed across the forest sky. He felt heat from the conversation mirror as he returned it to his pocket. The operation was proceeding to its second phase. That fact spurred Subaru to harden his resolve once more, raising a middle finger toward the madman's astonished eyes.
As for everything we were discussing, my answer is no.
Where?
If you don't get it, I'll say it so it's easier to understand. After careful consideration of your offer, there is an insurmountable clash of organizational culture between us. Therefore, though this is highly arbitrary of me, I am removing myself from consideration. I pray for your continued activity and growth hereafter, and stuff.
Subaru indicated that talks had broken off with a kind and careful explanation that was even harder to understand. With Patlash close by his side, he proceeded to gallantly mount her, taking the reins as he looked down at the madman. Betelgeuse, confused as he looked up, belatedly came to understand, whereupon he became filled with anger at Subaru's act of violence and shouted,
Do you comprehend what you are doing? I am an Archbishop of the Seven Deadly Sins. An Archbishop of the Seven Deadly Sins granted the grace of the witch. I have received her favor, the same as Lai.
Sorry, but I'm tired of hearing about all that. The witch can go eat shit, Betelgeuse.
Why? I ask. Why do you refuse her love, the favor of the witch? What is your reason for rejecting her grace? I, who have abandoned all things for her, cannot comprehend.
Betelgeuse tore at his head, letting spit fly as he spoke with intense emotion. He actually seemed intent on convincing Subaru with those desperate cries. If so, exchanging words with Betelgeuse truly lacked even a single shred of worth.
When I look at you, I sympathize with you a bit too. But let me tell you this.
Subaru paid the madman's delusions little heed, as he recalled the intricacies and rampages that had arisen from his own heart. He'd professed that he was right, asserted that everyone around him was wrong, and had spent his time wailing and engaging in temper tantrums like a child.
I see. It really is unbearable to watch. This is like the horrible example everyone should learn from. Right now, you're the one who's crazy, and I'm the one who's right. It ends here, Betelgeuse.
And so he bade farewell to his own mistakes. There had been nothing tying Subaru and Betelgeuse together in the first place. The madman, too, instantly understood that it had all been a performance and a fraud. The next moment, his decision was cruel and severe.
Violence, heresy! You shall pay for this! I shall rend you limb from limb and offer your soul to the witch!
Betelgeuse's laments cut off in an instant. His shadow seemed to explode, spreading and swelling as it became a multitude of pitch-black arms. These objects of overwhelming density cascaded toward Subaru, like a waterfall, to rip him limb from limb, wring his neck, and violate his soul, just as Betelgeuse had declared. But
why?
Hey, I was playing tag. You're it with demon beasts in these parts just 2 months ago.
Pat/Slash surmised Subaru's intentions through his unskilled use of the reins, moving more than she had been commanded. The wise dragon's movements deftly evaded the evil hands pursuing them as she leaped, escaping beyond the area of effect. The distance between them widened. Betelgeuse could not conceal his shock at his perfect opening attack being foiled. His eyes and mouth opened wide, so much that they nearly tore, and he wailed,
Just now, those movements you evaded, the favor granted unto me, impossible, insufferable! Why can you see my authority?
Who knows? The witch left her scent on my body, so go ask her. Oh, did I mention that, unlike you, the witch gave me a meet-me-anytime permission slip.
What do you mean by you blaspheme the witch Satella? By feigning closeness to her?
Hey, we're so close. She reaches out and grabs me by the heart, literally.
Subaru added a wink, taunting Betelgeuse with a maximum of ridicule. That moment, the madman's tolerance instantly reached the boiling point. His face went red with rage as he bit his own fingers to the core. A dull sound rang out as his teeth snapped the fingers, crushing nail, flesh, and bone alike. Responding to his intense emotions, the shadows swirling around the madman increased in density. Their total number increased, and even for Subaru, able to see the invisible evil hands, the difficulty level had just been jacked up. However, the one most surprised by the increase in the evil hands' numbers was Betelgeuse himself.
The factor granted to my fingers has returned! Why? What has happened to my...
As the witch factor you handed out comes back, the number of hands you can control increases. Well, the answer's obvious, isn't it? Hey, do the math, Lord Archbishop. Or maybe you're just too lazy.
Betelgeuse was at the mercy of consternation and rage when Subaru redoubled his taunt. When it came to getting under other people's skin, Subaru Natsuki came second to none. But an opponent like this, with zero resistance against instigation, was practically dancing on the palm of his hand. Exactly as planned, Betelgeuse was so angry that his face was dark red, thrusting his bloodlust-infused fist towards Subaru and sending the arms to bluntly smash him flat and rip his very life out.
Pat/Slash.
The land dragon grasped Subaru's intent, continuing to evade the carpet bombing, like Unseen Hand's offensive, with frightening accuracy. She was so dependable that Subaru truly couldn't bow his head enough to her. Subaru judged that they could continue to hold out against the first wave of attacks.
Operation Stage 3, let's go.
Just how many petty games do you intend to play? Against my diligence, this is all futile. Ah!
Betelgeuse readied himself for a counterattack, but the next moment, Subaru's action made his words choke in his throat.
Turning your back to me, just how much do you intend to mock me?
Sorry, but your stinky breath is making my eyes burn, so I have no choice.
With a command to Pat Slash, Subaru moved away from the rocky area and made a beeline for the forest. Pat Slash violently trampled the grass, blowing open a makeshift road like the wind itself as they distanced themselves from their foe.
Do not think that I shall allow you to escape.
Patelgeuse shouted, but in contrast to his words, he crouched down then and there. The instant after he did so, he sat holding his knees like a gym student as a shadow grabbed hold of him, hurling the madman toward the heavens. As if in a twisted game of catch, his body sailed with ease until another evil hand caught him. Catch, throw, repeating this over and over. Patelgeuse was hot on Subaru's and Patlash's heels as they fled. It was nightmarish pursuit, and it was not only he who pursued the pair.
Now, come forth! He mocks and scorns the exalted witch, violates her trial in her favor. Rend his flesh into tiny pieces and offer him to the witch!
When Patelgeuse's command fell from the sky, witch cultists hidden in the cave under the cliff appeared in the forest without a sound. They had not attended Subaru and Patelgeuse's conversation, but now that they knew Subaru was their foe, they had no reason to hesitate. Their steps seemed to glide along the ground as they pursued Subaru and the land dragon. Patelgeuse was above the treetops, and at their backs, the witch cultists were ferociously chasing them.
Here they come, here they come, here they come. Pat Slash, hang in there.
At Subaru's highly imprecise command, Pat Slash dealt with the crisis using her own judgment. She opted for speed, crashing through the slender trees that impeded her large frame. She trampled upon roots, vaulted over a depression, and snapped leafy branches apart as she charged straight forward, heading for their destination by the shortest possible route.
Futile! Meaningless! I shall catch up to you! Even that diligent land dragon's resistance shall be blotted out, overridden by diligence of my own!
From afar, mad shouts poured down upon them, and the tyrannical evil hands poured down like a waterfall. They aimed at the sprinting Pat Slash, each landing in the forest with all the force of a cannonball. Huge trees were broken at the trunk and sent flying, with dust clouds swirling up from the ground being pulverized over and over. But despite that waterfall, the dust cloud, and the madman's hatred pouring down, the land dragon ferociously burst through. Pat Slash, neighing loudly, was not unscathed. Even so, the land dragon had slipped through the attacks, protecting Subaru and herself. She had faithfully seen all Subaru's clumsy commands through.
Sorry for leaning on you this hard. You're the best, Pat Lash.
However, it ends here!
Patelgeuse's cackling, laughing voice interrupted Subaru's praise for his favorite dragon's valiant efforts. Pointing beneath him, the madman was not speaking of unseen hands. Rather, he indicated the group of black figures chasing them. With cross-patterned swords in hand, the witch cultists pursued the land dragon with unthinkable speed. The menace they posed far exceeded that of Patelgeuse's clumsy attacks. At that rate, the witch cult's blades would slice apart the land dragon's scales, whittling her life away. But a moment before that could happen... Wah! Huh. A high-pitched double roar made the air tremble, becoming a shockwave that bore through the world. These very particular voices formed a roar wave that enveloped large trees and boulders in a straight line, rocking the atmosphere as it slammed into the witch cultists. Bloody mist danced in the air where the shockwave had slammed into the group. So far as Subaru knew, only 3 people in that world were capable of using such voices. Whoo! You were in a super tight spot, mister. You were totally gonna die just now.
You were in danger of slightly missing the rendezvous point. This is thanks to Sister's intuition.
With a great and silly laugh, the Beast People siblings, Mimi and TB, lined up alongside Subaru, riding their large dogs. Their roar wave having rescued him from peril, Subaru looked over to them and raised a fist.
Hey, I was going all out back there, but thanks, I thought I was gonna bite it.
Oh, thank you. You are very welcome. Yay! I understand your feelings of confusion. The man above is an archbishop of the 7 deadly sins, correct?
Ignoring Subaru and Mimi's banter, TB glared up at the sky and inquired in a tense voice. The little cat's monocle covered eye caught sight of the madman, his habit flapping in the wind and narrowed.
What's that? That's amazing. That old man's all balled up and flying? Amazing. I have never before seen such a creepy method of flight.
Oh, right. That's what it looks like to you two.
Subaru, able to see unseen hands, and Mimi and TB were viewing reality differently. To the two of them, Patelgeuse, balled up like a gymnast, must have seemed to be flying all on his own, but Subaru beheld the nightmarish sight of tentacle-like evil hands throwing him again and again. Well, both were awful sights, really.
Either way, I'll deal with that one. Take care of the rear just as planned, 'kay?
Understood. Let us go, sister. Oh yeah. Mr.
Subaru would continue his dramatic escape from Patelgeuse while leaving subsequent witch cultists to the two of them. But just before changing course and departing, Mimi raised her hand to Subaru.
If you win, it'll be really cool.
Yeah, leave it to me.
At Mimi's words, Subaru gave the little cats a thumbs up as he leaped forward, praying they would have good fortunes in battle. Split apart by the roar wave they'd eaten, the witch cultist bore down on the pair, weapons in hand. At that point, other members of the Iron Fangs, Rajan and company, leaped in from all directions, whereupon general combat began. Subaru turned his back on the clashing of swords and pointed tauntingly at Patelgeuse high overhead.
Come on, Lord Archbishop. If you get distracted by kitties and lose track of me, you'll never live it down.
You, how far? How far will you go? Why?
Naturally, even Patelgeuse's cheeks stiffened as his attacks were thwarted over and over. Having arrived in the current situation from having lost himself to rage, the madman finally realized that he was in a disadvantageous circumstance. His fingers lurking in the forest had been destroyed, one by one. His unseen hands, in which he'd held absolute confidence, had been seen by another. And that very moment, his disciples had been ambushed and split apart, and Patelgeuse was alone. Did that situation not mean he had been dancing on Subaru's palm in every way?
That cannot be. There is nothing recorded of this in my gospel. What are you then? You receive favor, and yet you belittle the witch. You resist, you obstruct the trial I conduct, thwart my plans.
In midair, Patelgeuse clutched his gospel, holding it high as he shouted. His fingers had been taken away, and his authority was ineffective. He did not know it yet, but Amelia and the others had already been evacuated, so his vile acts to bring about the trial had failed before they had begun. Perhaps to Patelgeuse, this was what a nightmare looked like.
What are you?
Patelgeuse screamed at the absurdity of it all, froth rising to the corners of his mouth. Subaru calmly replied,
I'm doing this for the 4th time. When it comes to nightmares, I've seen enough to kill me.
He didn't care about Patelgeuse's confusion or his laments. Deny it all he could, it was useless. The instant before his eyes was the future he'd crossed multiple nightmares to reach.
You truly, you are pride.
My name is Subaru Ensuki.
When Patelgeuse shouted tenaciously, teeth creaking, Subaru invoked his own name.
Knight of the Silver-Haired Half-Elf Amelia. I don't know about this pride business, but that's the only title I need. The rest can go to hell.
He silenced Patelgeuse with a point of his finger in his caustic words. The next moment, the forest opened all at once. Ahead, another rocky place appeared. But this was not the rocky place where Subaru and Patelgeuse had faced off earlier. That said, it was not Subaru's first visit to the spot. There, once upon a time, Subaru had lost his life.
What is this place?
Earlier, I came to an end here, so this is the place that'll be your end. It's that kind of spot.
Arriving at their destination, Subaru commanded Patslash to slow her pace. Chasing them through the sky, the change in scenery and Subaru's statement made the madman wary, causing his vile visage to contort. Patelgeuse released himself from the evil hand grasping him, carrying him through the air, and fell to the ground. The madman landed, slowly lifting his face as he stood opposite the precipice, straight toward Subaru.
If it was your goal to invite me to this place, what is it you have prepared?
That goes without saying. A mortal enemy, yours and mine alike.
When Betelgeuse asked in a low voice, Subaru dropped from his land dragon and declared as such. His words made the madman grimace. Subaru closed one eye. When he did so,
Mortal enemy, once again, it is quite something, the ways that you address me.
the interrupting voice of a third party made Betelgeuse's head practically bounce as it swiveled around. Betelgeuse already realized that he had been lured. On guard against a surprise attack, the Archbishop of the Seven Deadly Sins stuck a finger into his mouth, strongly biting it as he surveyed the area. But his caution against a surprise attack was utterly meaningless.
I did not believe I would ever have another opportunity to hear such words again.
Saying this, the speaker leaped straight down from the top of the precipice to the rocky ground below. A surprise attack seemed unthinkable to him as he landed lightly, using a finger to set his handsome hair, askew from the wind, in order. Betelgeuse stifled his voice as his eyes widened, gazing at the handsome figure. However, the handsome man merely stood at Subaru's side, saying nothing of the madman's threatening gaze. Subaru glared at the side of his calm, collected face, grimacing in pronounced annoyance.
What? You've got a problem with my announcement.
No, I was concerned that you might be recalling previous events of which you could not be unashamed. It seems you are truly audacious. I am impressed that you would say such a thing in front of me, even now.
How about I repeat it in your sleep so you see it in your dreams?
I shall pass. Once is quite enough. Should I hear such a statement a second time, it shall be difficult to sear from my memory.
Drawing his slender sword, the knight answered, Subaru's biting sarcasm with sarcasm of his own. Subaru couldn't even remember how often the sight of his perfectly kempt royal guardsman uniform and his purple hair swaying in the wind had annoyed him. It burned him that that abominable sight was so dependable that moment.
Julius Euculus, assigned to the Knights of the Royal Guard of the Kingdom of Lugunica.
Identifying himself, Julius poised his drawn knight's sword, pointing its tip toward the madman. The next instant, lights of 6 different colors rose up and swirled around Julius, demonstrating their power to the wide-eyed Betelgeuse.
I am the sword of the kingdom, the sword that shall strike you down.
A spirit knight, I is it? Just how far, truly, just how far will you?
Betelgeuse's teeth clenched as he received those spoken words. His anger was not so much directed toward Julius for joining to battle as toward the quasi-spirits nestling close to him. On top of that, the madman glared at Subaru and spoke.
So this too is your doing. Never before have I been so humiliated.
That's so. Well, do enjoy. This is your just deserts, ye.
Subaru replied to Betelgeuse, in whom so much hatred seethed that he clenched his teeth hard enough to split them. Then Subaru patted Patch on the head, commanding her to depart from the battlefield.
You've been a big help this far. We'll settle the rest.
Pat rubbed Subaru's head with her nose in apparent concern before slowly shifting from the rocky place to the forest. Seeing her go, Subaru took a deep breath.
Let's do this, Julius.
You're fine with this?
Julius inquired. Subaru threw his shoulders back at the question. Unshakable determination rested in Subaru's eyes as he opened his mouth and spoke.
I won't retreat. I won't bend. I won't lose. I don't want to lose anyone else.
I am the man who beat you terribly, though I swear even now that I had significant reason for doing so. That is no more than self-righteousness so far as you are concerned.
Julius answered Subaru's resolve by speaking of the unforgettable karma that existed between them. Those words suddenly stirred bitter, out-of-place memories. The humiliation and anguish of that time came vividly rushing back as if something sharp bit deep into his chest.
I am not digging up the past in the hopes of washing away the shame. Your resolve is weighty, formed by each decision and action you have taken along the road to this point. Accordingly, I ask you, at this juncture, can you carry out your long-cherished desire with me at your side, not dispirited in any way? Can you trust in me?
Julius's question was extremely vague, coming off as out of place and even vaguely immature. But his meandering drew Subaru's attention to the barbs continuing to assert themselves in the deepest parts of him, a necessary ritual, so that he might turn and face them. At the Royal Selection Conference,
Subaru had put on a disgraceful display. At the training ground, his good name was not restored, but rather smashed all too perfectly at Julius's hand. His infamy redoubled. The devotion of one girl had continued to motivate Subaru, enabling him to rise to his feet again. And now that he stood and faced forward, there was a different girl he wished to support.
Guided by these twin lights, he struggled against fate. He wondered, how could he put the feelings from back then into words now? What kind of passion did he hold? What fierce emotions scorched within him? What colors of light burned bright within Subaru at that time? In that moment?
I really hate you.
Yes, I know.
That graceful air you give off annoys me, the way you talk sounds stupid and shady, and on top of that, you clearly look down at me, and now that I think about it, you kissed Amelia's hand the first time I set eyes on you. When someday I'm lavishing kisses over Amelia Tan's entire body, what, that's gonna be an indirect kiss with you? Give me a break.
When he thought back, he'd had hated Julius even before they had exchanged words for the first time. The entire sequence of events leading to Amelia's treating him cruelly began with Subaru's antagonism toward Julius. At the Royal Selection Conference, it grew significantly. At the training ground, it exploded, and the ashes continued to smolder thereafter. Even that very instant, they remained very hot, never ceasing to scorch Subaru's breast.
You broke my hands and feet, cracked my skull, you even chipped my permanent teeth. Even if they all got healed up, you'd expect the trauma to be real for anyone. Do you even know what holding back is?
I would like to point out that was still a great deal of restraint.
Seriously, that's holding back for you? I really do hate you the most.
Subaru, the self-declared knight, had known repeated shame for his powerlessness, ignorance, and recklessness. Julius had beaten Subaru to demonstrate what a knight was, fulfilling his role with capability and force. Subaru couldn't help but pity himself for playing the role of comic relief. But if he set that aside, the man remained, well, and truly, the knight Subaru had always wanted to be.
I really hate you, fittest of knights. Because of my shame, I know that you're one hell of a knight. That's why I trust you.
More than anyone in that place, more than anyone in that place in the past, Subaru intimately knew Julius's sword. Hence, it was him to whom Subaru entrusted his fate. For at that time, Subaru had come to know the weight behind his sword.
I'm counting on you, Julius. Everything I have, I give to you.
Subaru spoke those words to Julius from close enough for two people to shake hands. Upon hearing those words, Julius closed his eyes. He slowly opened them a few brief seconds later. Julius beheld Subaru in his yellow eyes, nodding strongly toward him.
Then I shall answer that shame with all my spirit.
When his sword rose, pointing to the heavens, the quasi-spirits granted their blessing to Julius's decision. The vibrantly colored quasi-spirits seemed to revolve around the sword as they danced in the sky. Among them, the two quasi-spirits colored white and black emitted the strongest light. And this increased still, strengthening and rising until Subaru's vision was practically burned away. Then, when the light shining on the battlefield with the precipice at its back finally relented, the madman moved.
Has your farce finally reached its end?
Petel Goose, who had kept his silence while watching the exchange between Subaru and Julius, inclined his head. His eyes were bloodshot as he pointed two bloody fingers toward the pair, creating countless vile, pitch-black hands in the process.
And just what can you do with the addition of a single spirit knight to the fray? It is absurd that any mere spirit could hinder me, my path, my love, my diligence. You shall fall. I shall tear the others to pieces. I need only commence the trial anew, for my diligence knows no slothful surrender nor demise.
His tongue stretched so far that his throat seemed unable to contain it. Pateljuice dug wounds into himself deep enough to reach bone as he shouted his premonition of death, sending his unseen hands to smash the pair flat in one blow. The evil hands rushing toward them exceeded 100, resembling a tsunami capable of covering the whole world, one that would swallow Subaru and Julius up like two pieces of driftwood, crushing them and tearing them into 1,000 pieces.
Al Clarista.
A rainbow-colored glimmer flashed forth, mowing the onrushing unseen hands down in an instant. The aurora borealis danced wildly, reflecting light at seemingly random angles to create blades tracing shimmering arcs. Bathed in that glimmer, the black phantasms dispersed like mist down to their roots, and the savagery they were to wreak was permanently halted.
What?
You should not act so surprised.
Julius, who had swung his rainbow-imbued blade, elegantly replied to Betelgeuse's dumbfounded utterance.
If they can touch us, we can touch them. If mutual interference is possible, a rainbow aura imbued with the 6 elements can cut it.
The 6 types of quasi-spirits, contracted with Julius, all rested within the cavalier's sword, giving off rainbow hues. The glimmering aurora of his blade turned it into a beautiful and frighteningly powerful enchanted blade. However, that wasn't what was bothering Betelgeuse.
The madman resentfully shook his head, his feelings of consternation causing bloody tears to flow as he pointed at Julius and spoke.
You cannot see them. Surely you cannot. That exceeds the fact that my unseen hands have been cut. That is the problem. You cannot possibly see them. And yet beyond me, they are seen by T2.
The fact that after Subaru, Julius could also keep his unseen hands at bay made his teeth shake down to the molars, his face stricken less by anger and confusion than by deep, powerful fear. It was the fear of having his final refuge, the very foundation of his faith, ripped away from him. For the first time, the sight of Betelgeuse like that made Subaru feel sympathy toward him as a human being. But this was overridden by a sense of accomplishment. Take that, will you? He truly, finally had found an edge.
A base villain like you who knows not the favor of the witch cannot possibly see the grace granted unto me alone.
Visibly spitting blood as he screamed, Betelgeuse was denying the reality before his eyes. Accordingly, Subaru taught him just what was happening, further pounding that reality home.
I'm the one who sees them, Betelgeuse.
What? What?
I'm the one who sees your unseen hands. Julius is just seeing what I see. It feels even ickier than I expected, though.
This was the quintessence of Nect, the magic to share one's thoughts. Normally, the magic was used to link together the minds of human beings within Nect's area of effect, enabling simple telepathic conversations. However, it required careful use, as befitted high-ranking magic. Once Julius had explained the dangers thus: if the empathy level is too high, the boundaries between the self and others become blurred, and beings become mixed with one another. If you mixed 2 minds together enough, in other words, synchronized the senses, raising the effectiveness to its highest extreme.
It is possible to mentally maintain 2-person senses joined as one, though I had certain doubts about your sanity when you first made this proposal.
But we pulled it off, didn't we? When you put men and courage together, they can do anything.
Zero Starting Life in Another World by Tappy Nagatsuki, casted 6-tale novel. Please subscribe to our channel. Through the power of Nect, Subaru's and Julius's senses were completely synchronized on a deep level. That moment, through Subaru's sense of sight, Julius had to be seeing it too, the sway of Betelgeuse's countless unseen hands seemingly dyeing the forest black. Subaru was also aware of the mana coursing through Julius's entire body and of the warm pulses imparted by the quasi-spirits that flowed into him. The input from the 5 senses was doubled in the process, creating the incredibly discordant feeling of having 10 senses.